I'm Devendra Hardawar. This week I'll be chatting with Alex Lindsay, Anthony Ha, and Paris Martineau. We'll be diving into Sam Altman's surprise firing from OpenAI, as well as Apple's move towards RCS. Is this going to mean a change for bubble colors on iPhones? We don't know. Coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 954, recorded Sunday, November 19th, 2023. Waiting for the Pope smoke.
This episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Big wireless providers are not your only option. Get rid of that big bill you get every month by switching to Mint Mobile. Get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free. Go to mintmobile.com/twit. And by ExpressVPN. When your phone carrier tracks you, that's a gross invasion of privacy. You can either keep letting them cash in on you or visit expressvpn.com/twit to get the same VPN I use. Take back your online privacy today. Use my link to get 3 extra months free. And by Traceroute, the podcast for digital pioneers. Traceroute offers a fascinating glimpse into the inner workings of our digital world. Get keyed into the conversation now. Listen and subscribe to the new season of Traceroute on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Traceroute now.
It's time for Twit, This Week in Tech. I'm Devendra Hardawar. I'm a senior editor in Engadget. I co-host the Engadget podcast, and I'm not Leo Laporte. He is off in Las Vegas following the F1 Grand Prix, I believe, so hopefully he has good seats and good stories to tell everybody. And you know what? Not really much is happening in the tech world, right? So this is a great week for Leo to take off, I think. Joining me is a great panel, including Alex Lindsay. Hey, Alex, how's it going?
It's good. Good to be here. Yeah,
Happy to have you here.
Nice slow week for us. I mean, it was, all the way up to the end. We just figured we not a lot to talk about today.
It was really right up to the end of Friday, where I was like, oh, this is going to be a chill episode. We are going to talk about our turkey recipes. We're going to talk about what we're thankful for. What I'm not thankful for is breaking news over the weekend. I'll talk about that. But also joining us is Paris Martineau, reporter at The Information. Hey, Paris, how's it going?
Hey, I'm always thankful for breaking news, even if it's over the weekend. It's thrilling. It's one of those days where you check your phone every 5 minutes and something new happens. I love it.
We are broken people, I feel like, reporters specifically. Also laughing, there's Anthony Ha, freelance reporter, former TechCrunch reporter. Specifically, I feel like I was looking at all of my, media friends, especially tech people, and we were just feeding. Like, we were feasting all weekend on every little update. Oh, Sam Altman posted a tweet of his guest pass. That was the latest thing. So we're going to be talking about everything happening at OpenAI. And specifically the surprise firing of Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, on Friday because of his board. It just kind of hit us all at once. And I'm wondering, can somebody help us break it down? Like, Paris, I feel like you're probably following this closely.
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of the TikTok here. And this is, I guess, put together with context. Around noon Friday, news breaks via the form of a press release that OpenAI's board has fired CEO Sam Altman. And notably, the thing that I think is worth noting with this is the press release is kind of snarky for one of these press releases. It says he was fired because he wasn't candid in his communications. And that's not something you normally get for a firing like this. So already the tech press is hackles are raised. They're like, this guy's out. What's going on? Then a couple minutes later, or I guess within a couple of hours, we get word that Greg, the president of OpenAI, has resigned as well. Around the same time, there's an all hands within OpenAI. You've got the new CEO or interim CEO, Mira. I'm forgetting her last name. She talks to people, is like, Microsoft has total confidence in OpenAI. We're going to be totally fine. But over the next 24 hours, news starts to break that not only basically what happened here was a coup. Sam Altman didn't know about any of this until he was put in a Zoom meeting with the board and told you're fired. Mira, the new interim
Mira
CEO, Mira Murati, the new interim CEO of OpenAI, didn't know until the day before that she was going to be the new interim CEO of a company. The president, who has since resigned of OpenAI, didn't know until he was put into a Google Meets. And over the rest of Friday, you start to have senior OpenAI researchers like resign en masse. It's absolute chaos there. By Saturday, we start to get news that Sam Altman and his president and some of the people who have resigned are thinking of starting their own competing AI company and are talking to investors. People are freaking out. You get word that Microsoft didn't even know that Sam Altman was being pushed out. It seems like no one knew but the members of the board and kind of a small cabal of people.
Just
and
wild. Yeah.
Over the last 24 hours, we've learned that people within OpenAI are trying to get Sam Altman back and rehire everyone who resigned. And ostensibly, if that happens, that means the board will be out as well.
That was so. We are recording this on Sunday night. We heard, and I believe The Verge and the information was following. Like there were discussions on Saturday night about this. Didn't go anywhere. Apparently, as we are recording this, Sam Altman is on the premises of OpenAI and is currently having this discussion with the board. So maybe by the time we are done with this recording, we're going to break news live. Like as
there is a non-zero chance that during the recording of this, Sam Altman is reinstated as the CEO of OpenAI. He is in the building right now.
This is I don't know. I cannot remember when last there was a media thing like this. Alex, Anthony, thoughts? Yeah, I
think that it's a pretty it's going to be a fascinating. There's almost a whole book in here that is of all the things not to do. I think it's mostly a lesson book, as opposed to a book about where to go with this. There are some reports that some of this started with a reduction of responsibilities for Sutskever over the summer, and this is probably where the story really begins. Is him getting a little less responsibility over the summer, taking that badly, and then starting to turn the crank. You're talking about someone who probably is not on the far end of emotional intelligence scale. There's a picture that I saw.
This is like a whole company filled with that. But yeah.
But it is. But I think that the problem that they had with Sam Altman was pretty far out there as far as being able to engage with people and engage with employees, engage with the industry. They didn't have a lot of other people that were able to do that, and so. But I think that Sutskever, started to turn this crank, started to build up this, and I think that something. Probably some issues that happened over the last week and during the conference last week, the APEC conference, where Altman kind of casually says, there's only been 4 times when we've really seen anything really happen with our technology, and one of them happened a couple weeks ago. And I have a feeling that's when Ilya goes, see, we got to get him out here right now before he does any more damage, blah, 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 blah. But I think that really he had a plan to move that down the path. And, and I think that if you look at, I think that the folks that voted for it are the folks that are the most concerned about the technology. And I thought about it. I was like, I think that this might permanently damage OpenAI in a variety of different ways, and that might have been their intention.
I mean, it does
permanently damage it because they think it's going too fast. They want to put a brake on it, and they're willing to spike it to do that. So I don't think that it was necessarily. At first, I thought it was a huge miscalculation. I said that on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is. I think that damaging, putting a spike in the company, is that might have been the intention. Yeah. And it's kind of what you get with this kind of when you build a board of academics as opposed to operators.
Academics, some business people, but it's a weird structure. And I just want to make some things clear here. You're talking about OpenAI co-founder and chief scientist Ilya Sutskever, who is basically head of the research side. And from everything I've read, is basically, it seems like this came down to a big, I guess, disagreement about the direction of the company between the business side, like Sam Altman's side, and the research side, which is Sutskever's side, who really wanted to slow things down. But also, how could this even happen? Like, Anthony, can you help explain what the heck is going on with this board? Because this is not a normal company. OpenAI is a very strange organization overall.
Right. Well, I can't claim to be an expert on it, so hopefully you guys will correct me.
You're in the hot seat, Anthony.
Here. But my sense is that my understanding is essentially that, OpenAI started as a nonprofit and there's sort of a for-profit entity within it, but the nonprofit board still controls it. And so the incentives and what the board is essentially supposed to be kind of optimizing for is not necessarily the same as it would be for a for-profit company. They're essentially not accountable in quite the same way that a for-profit board, which, not to say that's like an amazing structure or transparent structure either.
It's interesting. It's certainly,
yes, but it was very surprising, I think, as you read just sort of checking in with this over the weekend, you'd see the story start to get fleshed out, because a lot of people are like, who is the OpenAI board? Like, who are the people making these decisions? And so it seems like part of the reason they were able to do this is because it's sort of this unusual governance structure. And I mean, definitely one of the things that when I read that initial announcement was I thought, oh, well, he must have done something really bad.
Yeah.
Like the way they worded it, you're like, there may be something really terrible they discovered, and, for various legal reasons, they're not disclosing it, but I'm sure it'll get leaked. And it really seems like that isn't the case. I mean, again, maybe other things will come to light, but that it seems like much more about this, essentially the schism within the company, and essentially that people felt like they didn't like the direction that Sam was taking the company in, and they tried to take him out, and it seems like have failed because they didn't have the support of the rest of the company.
This whole thing feels like, sorry, Paris, I will get to you. It feels like an Aaron Sorkin script. It feels exactly like watching the Steve Jobs movie, which I left, by the way, but it is so dramatic and so heightened. Paris, go ahead.
No, it absolutely does feel like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's unprecedented in business that a company's leader is going to be like defenestrated like this and then somehow pulled back up into the window and the window closed. But I was going to say
in the span
one
of a
thing,
weekend.
in the span of a weekend, conceivably, instead of weeks or months. It's wild. I do think one aspect of this that is interesting when you talk about OpenAI's board being this nonprofit entity that's supposed to serve as a check on the for-profit business is that it adds an interesting color to the fact that so many OpenAI investors, including Microsoft, are now pushing for Sam Altman and his group to be reinstated, because that would mean a new board. And is that new board going to be nonprofit or for-profit? If it's for-profit, that could be very good for investors who have a vested interest in this.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say that we have to remember that this board is not accountable to the benefit of the company. It's accountable to the nonprofit, and so so them making the decisions that they were put together there, makes sense in the context that they have it there, but this grew way out of control. Like, this is so far out. It's one thing to say, oh, we got to change something in a little nonprofit. It's another thing to have a $70 or $80 billion juggernaut moving in an industry that's about to hockey stick and then dump it, is like, throwing a spike into a tractor trailer engine at full tilt.
It's kind of amazing to watch. Yeah.
And so, so I think that I do think that now they have to decide what they are, and who they are. I think that, again, if Sam Altman, it'll be interesting to see if he's going to come back to it. I think the reason he comes back is he knows it's going to take a long time to build models again. So it would take 2 or 3 years for him to get back, and the industry could be in some other place by then to get back to where OpenAI is. The reason he doesn't come back, obviously, is because he has probably almost unlimited funding right now. Like, if he wanted to raise $1 billion by Friday, he would have it, to do this all over again. And so I think that's the. I think that those are the ups and downs of that process, but I do think that he clears the board if he goes. I wouldn't go back if I hadn't cleared everybody who voted against me, everybody who thought about it, and everybody that knows them.
You're all out.
Like,
I mean,
you just wipe out everybody that's connected to that, and then clarify the board, reduce. I mean, the reason that a lot of these big companies are big companies is because they have a very strong CEO or almost absolute control by the founders. That's the why. If you look at Google, Facebook, Apple, as it grew, all these companies, Amazon, there was a very, very strong CEO or founders that had almost absolute control. Allowing a committee to start making these kind of decisions is crazy.
It's not unheard of in the world of tech, though. Like, looking at OpenAI, I'm thinking of like how much of this is like a hyper accelerated startup, right? Because Steve Jobs was kicked out of Apple, right? Jack Dorsey was kicked out of Twitter. It is a thing that does happen. It's strange to see it happen so soon. So that's like the thing that's really getting to me. But also, I think we should probably take a step back just for the listeners. Like, what the heck is OpenAI? Because I think even the very foundation of this company is unusual. It's really strange. It's a whole thing, because it was Sam Altman, it was Elon Musk, it was a whole bunch of those folks coming together to stop bad AI. And that's why this whole thing is really weird. It's very much like the Simpsons joke of Principal Skinner going to the burlesque house. He's like, I'm here to figure out how to get out of here, right? Because they want their supposed goal, and the goal with the research side is to create, AGI, artificial general intelligence, but also create it and then make sure it's not bad. And it's there's a lot of like AI, I don't know, doomsayer stuff going on with them too. Like, this is a weird company that pushed itself to build AI, and I think arguably did it better than anybody at this point, like more so than Google, but also was never about taking over the world with AI. But then that ended up happening, right? It's a very weird thing.
Yeah, in 2019, when Sam Altman became the CEO of OpenAI, he helped form kind of the for-profit entity that exists within this non-for-profit entity. And the reason why they did that is ostensibly they were hoping to like raise money from outside investors, including like Microsoft, in order to fund like servers so that they could actually train the best AI and accomplish their original nonprofit goals. And part of this solution is that there's kind of supposed to be a theoretical cap on the profits the company could generate for its principals and investors, which kind of gets more complicated. And I think probably gets to the root of what this conflict is about, which is ostensibly was kind of kicked off by simmering disagreements between Altman and people on the AI research team about what they're developing and how best to use it and whether or not to slow that down.
And I think, yeah, go ahead.
I think that one of the challenges is also, you can say, well, it's all about the commercialism of it, but there's also there's a side of research that wants to just keep it pure, of all research in all areas. They want to keep it pure. They don't want to have it be, and then there's commercialism. But part of that problem with commercialism is also continuing to have a seat at the table. The industry is moving so quickly. If AI didn't grow with it, it would just become this kind of book stop of this was a Xerox PARC for everybody, like everybody came in, they all went here and then they all left. And you see this, Reid Hoffman left and Elon Musk left, all because they're doing their own things out of that. And you would have just slowly seen AI just kind of dissipate into nothing.
Again,
if it wasn't able to continue to grow. And so the commercial side of it is the more practical side of this. If we want to actually be part of the conversation, we have to keep on growing with the industry that's in front of us.
Arguably they're the ones like also accelerating the industry too, which is the weird like cycle OpenAI is in, but also the weird cycle I think the tech world is in right now. Like, I'm thinking about like what happened with Microsoft this year, folks, and early in the year, Bing Chat became like the thing that kind of wowed everybody early on, and seeing them directly integrate ChatGPT, I think kind of blew everybody away. Google was caught flat-footed, and everybody kind of raced, and generative AI became like the thing we were all talking about this year. But I was just at the Microsoft event in September, the one where they announced, hey, Copilot is coming to Windows, right? It's going to be the new essential thing. And I couldn't help but like look around and be like, I don't know who needs this. Who wants this? And it's a tool that you also can't fully trust, right? Because we still know the AI hallucinates. It's not always delivering factual information. It is pulling information from the internet, but not always like approved sources or something. So I remember asking Microsoft executives, like, what are you guys going to do when like these things are spitting out wrong information to, grandma who's asking for computations or something, or for recommendations for something? And the response I keep getting from people is that we hope our users will understand that this is a learning experience. And to me, that does not feel like a good answer. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of human beings spewing out a lot of inaccurate
this is true
information as well on the internet.
But I don't expect my computer to do that, Alex. Well, like I don't expect like I hit the start button.
The computer's limited to what it has access to, and AI is very much like, I always think of AI. I have ChatGPT open all the time, and I knew that it broke some curve when my wife, who is not the kind of person that would jump into all of this, she was saying, "Oh, I was working on these Christmas presents, and I asked it for ideas, and I was like, "You're talking to ChatGPT?" She was like, "I have the app on my phone. It's great." And, she does it all the time. And so it's crossed some angle of where it's really powerful is brainstorming. I'm trying to think about something. I'm trying to whatever. I'm not going to put this in a court of law. I just want you to give me some ideas and some other. I make recipes out of it. I make a lot of soups that are made out of ChatGPT, and so it's good for those kinds of things. Yeah. I think that it's very book smart. So when I have a tendency to view theoretical knowledge as almost more dangerous than no knowledge, because you are interacting with the construct, not reality. And so it's like it's like somebody who's read a whole bunch of things about something, about playing the piano. It doesn't mean they can play the piano. so they know a lot about how to do it. They just don't know how to do it. And so the thing is, I think ChatGPT is very much like book smart folks who have read a lot of things about something, but until they actually do it, ChatGPT hasn't had that opportunity. So it doesn't have that knowledge. And I think a lot of the hallucinations come from that.
Yeah, it's going to get better, of course. Like Paris and Anthony, like, are you folks like actually using any of the AI tools at this point?
I use it as a party trick. That's it.
I use it every day.
Wow.
For what?
Midjourney. Okay,
I mean, soups.
Yeah.
But yes, what else?
Good soups.
So when I'm brainstorming about something, okay, I don't quite understand how this technology works. I'll say, you are now, the key with ChatGPT, by the way, is source protocol target, and if you do source protocol target, you get a very, very accurate, or much more accurate view of things, which is, you are this. So you are a teacher, you are Richard Feynman, you are whatever that is. Explain this to me, and this is who I am, who's receiving it. So explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader, explain it to me like I'm a college student or whatever. And it will wire something together that is very effective, and what I do is I'll scan through that. But a lot of that, what it does is it gives me language, and then I go to Google and I start Googling, but I know what to Google for now. Like, I can find out more information about this because of X, Y, and Z. Now in Midjourney, I use it for a lot of my presentations. I do a lot of keynote presentations. And so I do a lot of presentations. And if I'll say, I want, I had a presentation, I needed 3 confused guys with glasses in the style of Pixar over a plain white background. And so I get that, and I key it and I put it into my thing. And it's a funny, but I have like, in a given presentation, I might have 20 or 30 of those images that I generated out of ChatGPT as what we would call, I used to do legal animation in another life, and we would have demonstrative evidence and evidentiary, or demonstrative, and evidentiary. And I did mostly demonstrative, which is, I can explain something to you. It's not evidence, and I don't have to prove it. I just am using it to explain a concept. That's what I find that ChatGPT is really good at. It's what I use Midjourney for. But I have them all the time, like they're opened all the time. And I think that, it really does accelerate a lot of things that we're working on. So,
I mean, here's the thing, Alex, I feel like I've listened to you for years, so I kind of get a sense of like how you interact with tech, and you are a power user. You're a very technical user, right? I'm just worried when like my grandma or somebody else is like starting to ask the same questions, and it's just delivering information, and that is the end of the conversation, right? Like when they're not going to Google to do the future research, but they're running based on whatever the thing is.
I worry about people Googling.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's fair.
Well, that's all fair.
It's like Google. I mean, you're asking a bunch of random people what their opinion is about something. I don't know if that's that much more. I mean,
that's an act of sifting through knowledge, though, right? And not just accepting what you're given at first. So,
we should be doing that all the time with absolutely everything that we listen to and see. You should be sifting information. If you see something on the news, what are 3 other people? What are the three other organizations that don't agree with each other? So give me a liberal, a conservative, and a middle ground. Whatever they agree on is probably pretty close to the truth, and everything else is their opinion. And so you have to, but you've got to constantly if you want the truth, you have to constantly by triangulating it, not accepting any one source as truth.
It's I mean, there's something to be said for using AI stuff as a tool. I think one of my favorite things right now is Mac Whisper, which is the app that taps into, language models to just transcribe text. Yep. And I'm a reporter, so I'm always recording audio. And the worst part of my life is sitting there and just like manually trying to transcribe notes.
Wait, what sort of service do you use for that?
It's listen, so I used to use Rev, which was like a really nice transcription service. It wasn't that expensive. Then we learned that Rev treated its employees like crap, like not so good. So we kind of moved away from Rev. And then I started using other things that were also like AI based. I think it was Comma AI. I forget if that's the right company.
You tried
also
Otter?
Yeah, Otter. It was Otter for a while, and they were also using like AI transcription stuff. But now, like with the large language models, I don't have to like send it somewhere. I can just like sit there. I have a 5 gigabyte large language model sitting in my computer that could just give me really high quality transcriptions. It takes 10 minutes, but that's like an hour I don't have to spend doing this stuff, and I can look at the copy and clean it up. But it's still pretty good, and that makes my life functionally better. So
Well,
for me, that stuff is good. Yeah.
And when you think about accessibility with these large language models, there's going to be a point where your average city council meeting will be translated in real time to 60 languages. And that point in time when that happened, while they're talking, you could come in and say, I want to listen to this in Khmer, or I want to listen to this in Amharic, and you'd be able to get that language for anybody in that community. And, that time is probably less than 24 months away, like at the speed at which this is evolving. And so there are a lot of things. We started using Zoom has a summary. It has this thing where it'll listen to you and give you a summary. We don't use it with external clients because we're not, we don't want to weird them out, but we use it for internal meetings all the time. It is remarkable. It's way better. I used to always be in a meeting with take note with somebody to take notes because I don't take notes. And so having it do all of that for me was, and it really, it's kind of amazing. And those are the kind of things that this is going to be able to do much faster very soon.
Yeah. I used to be a bit of a bear when it came to Gen AI, but even last week on This Week in Google, we were talking about ChatGPT and kind of the recent GPT marketplace that they've rolled out. And Leo is has been making some of his own GPTs. He gave a couple of examples of
who let this happen. I feel like only bad things will come from this.
This is what I thought as well. But no, they were actually quite interesting. It was like he had a bunch of different PDFs and texts relating to a programming language he's trying to learn, put them all in his GPT. And so set it up so that the system cannot pull any information from anywhere other than the text he's put in there, put in a couple different websites. And then anytime he has a question about this programming language, he can just ask his, custom GPT and get a custom answer specifically from 10 different source materials. And it is fascinating. I think that is a really, that was the first light bulb use case I saw for these large language models that I could see infinitely scalable and applicable to a bunch of different situations. Like what you guys were just saying, with city council meetings, you could have a GPT of every city council meeting that has ever happened, including the transcripts for it. And you could just ask questions to that and get specific searchable results.
Anthony, I think you were going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think a lot of these examples speak to the promise of generative AI. And I think where I get a little bit more skeptical is the idea that it will be and should be the sort of default interface for kind of online knowledge, that this is the thing that replaces, Google, or the new Google is, basically a chatbot, interface for, some sort of future chat GPT. And I feel like that, maybe at some point that happens. And I think this also is something that's happening separate from the developments in AI. It's just this kind of 10 blue links model is kind of going away. And I think that maybe eventually we'll get there, where it's actually a powerful interface, but it feels like there's this rush on the part of these companies to say this is absolutely the future. Let's do this. And it feels like the underlying technology isn't really at a place where it feels ready for that. And of course, then there's the self-interested thing of what does the media business look like in that world? And I don't have a good answer to that either.
That's a lot of things don't look so great if we scale this forward a little bit. But I can't imagine what Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, felt as this news hit, because there were reports that he was surprised by this news as well. This is a guy who pushed his, invested $10 billion, I think even more reportedly, into OpenAI, is basically centering the future of Windows and Office and everything Microsoft around it. If you hear the term Copilot, it's because they've been talking about Copilots for years. It was a part of what was it? It was a part of the programming thing that they do as well. So Microsoft has bet so much on it. So to have something like the CEO of the company potentially fall off, I don't know. It kind of rocks the boat. It reminds me of when they were starting to do Windows 8, and I remember sitting in a hotel in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress while Microsoft was talking about the vision of tablets on Windows. And I remember thinking to myself, you took away the start menu, you idiots. Everyone's going to hate this. And everyone hated it. So,
well, I think I do think that it was a very odd move to not talk to anyone. Usually, if you're going to get rid of a CEO of a large company, of a $60 billion company, A, there's a lot of proof about why you're doing it. And B, there's a lot of discussion about it. If you look at most of the other ousters, there's usually a bunch of people talking about it. It doesn't mean that they don't get kicked out, but it usually means that there's a bunch of discussion. I don't think they wanted to discuss it because I think that the instigators of this knew that if Sam Altman got into the conversation, that they would never be able to pull this off. And if the venture heard about it, they would never be able to pull it off. And now they're learning that they're still never going to be able to pull it off. And so the issue is that I think it made Microsoft look really bad, and I think especially that he's up on stage with Sam Altman on the week before or days before, talking about AI and talking about the work together. I think that it's a really complex thing, and it's also why Apple doesn't look as crazy as they seem from the surface. So you feel like wow, Apple really fell behind. And Apple does this often. They kind of draft on everybody. Like they just kind of they just watch everyone take
a lot of notes and draft and iterate privately.
You know what they say? If you're one step ahead, you're a leader, and two steps ahead, you're a martyr. And they're just letting everyone kind of sort that out, as they just kind of follow behind the front line and figure out where they need to go. They've got plenty of money to go. And I looked at this, I was like, if Apple could offer Sam Altman $1 billion right now, we'll just give you $1 billion in stock and unlimited resources and solve any catch up that they needed to do. But I don't know. I think that jumping in this quickly and this early, Microsoft kind of put themselves in that position of risk because they wanted to be aggressive. And a lot of it had to do with Google's been working on this for a decade. They've been doing this for a long time. I think everyone was afraid of the legal ramifications of AI, and so they kind of sat in the back until they were forced to move forward. By OpenAI and others to just start moving forward, because now they're going to get left behind if they don't kind of bend the rules and see where the edges are.
I do think it starts to make sense, why Google was taking a little while, the caution there, because there are potential issues. We are now having the global discussion about what the future of AI means, or if we're pushing too hard and not thinking about the potential downsides here. And I think Google was not ready for that conversation. It is very strange that Microsoft, of all companies, is the one with the foot on the pedal pushing OpenAI to do this. So I find that really strange.
Google would have their antitrust would be harder if they were taking a leadership position in AI as well. So they, I think there's a certain level of they don't need to add more things. I mean, if you look at how Google works without what we call AI, which is still a lot of algorithms that are there, it's like looking into the sun. If you've ever been in an advertising meeting with them over how this all works, it is, the calculations that they're making are stunning, and that's without generative AI. So they definitely, and Bard, I play with Bard a fair bit as well, and it's competitive. It's not quite as good as ChatGPT, but it's definitely, they're not that far behind.
At least there is competition. I'll also say I've used ChatGPT and Bard to do things I have to compare products a lot because I'm a product reviewer, unfortunately. So things like what were the specs last year, compared to this year? What is the weight and stuff? Being able to just give me a table of information that I can just glance at is super useful. And then I go and typically go, double check all that stuff. And the numbers are usually good because at least table specs are things that exist on the internet, right? So it's very easy to pull that data out and reuse it. I'm still worried about, other things. It's probably worth taking a note, though. We should talk about Sam Altman because now everyone is looking at this guy. I remember when I started covering startups over at VentureBeat along with Mr. Anthony Ha. I remember writing about Looped, which was his friend location based thing, which came out before Foursquare. Everybody called it, a social location company that was a pioneer in the space. It went nowhere. It sold for basically the amount of money it was funded for. That's what I remember. And then he was tapped to run
Y Combinator.
Y Combinator, and that also felt like a thing of is he the role model for Y Combinator? I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about Altman as a leader? Because he is not the tech guy. He's not the one producing, the AI algorithms and building these models. He's the guy kind of pushing to get things done, right?
Well, but also Steve Jobs wasn't the one writing the code either.
Right.
It is someone who is asking the right questions, saying, killing the right things, and pushing energy towards the things that make difference and making all the deals. I mean, if you look at again, if you go back to Apple, look at Tim Cook. A lot of Tim Cook's job is to keep people from regulating Apple out of existence. And so, the CEO's job is to do a lot of things that are a lot of soft power issues, where you're not writing the code, but you are making huge impacts and keeping for a company as it grows, keeping everybody just going in the same direction is like herding cats on cocaine. I mean, it's like, like everybody's going in 1,000 different directions, and they all have opinions and they're all excited, especially in a startup. And you have to kind of pull everybody, the CEO's job is to pull everyone together. And I don't think that they had anybody to replace him to do that. Not only that, because he's so connected to the employees, him leaving would devastate that company. Like it would, him leaving and building his own company, he'll pull half the researchers, out of it, and all of the ones that are aggressive. Like he's going to take all the aggressive ones and pull them out with him, that want to build big, and so that would make it. I mean, the company doesn't. I don't think the company lasts. Is not. It could last. I don't think the company would be effectual. Like we wouldn't think about it in 2 years if he leaves. OpenAI will be it'll be a little stone that OpenAI did this and got everybody to do this stuff. And then all these other companies happened, after them, because they've, without him, I don't think they can do it. I don't think they have the people to do it. And people think that you could just put another person in charge. That's not how that works. There's a handful of people at any given time that can actually make those decisions and inspire people to move forward.
I remember just, seeing him at events, seeing him at Y Combinator stuff too, and also being like, he is one of those tech, sort of people that have the like huge unblinking eyes. So it's also like, this man is part robot. Like he is just like driven. And from what I've read, like that was one thing that Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, really liked about him, is that he was just so purposeful and so mission driven. There are quotes about Altman saying, or that he himself says, like, it's very easy to get people to bend to your will, which is a very... I mean, I guess people like that succeed in business. So, okay. Anthony, do you have any Altman stories? Because you were covering him for a while too.
I mean, yeah, I don't have any like really fun stories. I mean, I've definitely like talked to him. I think he and I like were on like, stage together at some VentureBeat events and things. But I mean, if anything, I would say that I've probably, I would say that objectively, it seems like I've underestimated him for a long time. Because I remember having the same response when he took over Y Combinator, and sort of, as the head of Y Combinator is supposed to do, is like sort of becomes this font of startup wisdom. And I'm like, really? Like you got all this stuff from running Looped? Okay. But, it seems, I mean, again, I think there's some question about exactly sort of why he left and how effective he was at Y Combinator. But it's certainly, OpenAI, it's sort of hard to argue that he hasn't essentially become the face of an industry. I mean, both in positive and negative ways. But I think there was a long time where I was just kind of like, this guy who's like the same age as me and who'd had this sort of startup that wasn't that successful, I don't understand why we're talking about him this way. But since then, I mean, it seems like he, obviously has achieved a lot. And I also, to Alex's point, I think give a lot of credence to the fact that, the people who work for him at OpenAI are the people who probably know him a lot better than certainly than I do. And the fact that they all were kind of like, okay, if he's gone, we're gone, I think seems pretty telling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's notable that kind of one thing that is part of Sam Altman's mystique, at least at OpenAI, is that he kind of personally was responsible for recruiting a lot of the key researchers and engineers from Google and other companies that ended up being like instrumental in launching ChatGPT. So he kind of has the cultural and political clout to pick up his toys and go home when he's been kicked out of the company, and people will follow him.
Well, I think that also from a thought leadership perspective, he's like one of, I don't even know who else sits in the one or two or three people that people consider the voice of AI at the moment. Like, like that he's gotten to that point where people are following him on Twitter. They're watching what he's talking about. And he seems to be in the center of all of those things. And again, that's why he would be able to move to he'd be able to move to wherever he wanted to go and start something over. I think the only thing that would get him back to OpenAI, like, as I said before, is the worry of delaying, having to rebuild from scratch. Even though it would be faster than it was before, still a lot of processing.
Well, yeah. I would also imagine that if whatever new thing he started, that he'd probably be like locked in like litigation with OpenAI for years in terms of like,
you can't just steal the researchers.
Was he allowed to hire these people? Like, did he use any tech? And maybe he'd be totally unclear, but I just think from a headache perspective, it's probably way less if he comes back.
welcome to California, though. I mean, there's not a lot of non-competes don't exist.
Right. I know they're not enforceable. Yeah.
And the thing is that the problem is that you get in trouble when he plans to leave and then sets other people up to leave with him. He's got all kinds of legal problems. When you cut him off but he can still call back and pull anybody he wants out of it. In California, you can do that all day, and so the thing is the fact that they fired him suddenly without allowing him to do anything leaves him it's a much clearer path for him to go and just gut the company than if he had decided he was going to leave, and then if he socialized it for 2 months that I'm leaving and you're coming with me and everything else. That is super complicated anywhere. But if you fire him, he can go back and just strip you dry, in California. That's, so again, that's both the advantage and the disadvantage of being a California company.
The most recent update is a deadline has apparently been set for 5 p.m. Pacific time today,
We're waiting.
on Sunday. We're waiting for the board to either agree to Altman's demands and or not. I guess part of the holdup is his demands involve, the board basically stepping down and new people being reinstated, which is going to be difficult for the board to agree to.
I just think that to save face, they should just step down. Like the board should just step down or they're going to sit on a sinking ship for the next 2 years being blamed for it. Like if I was on the board at this point, I'd be like, well, we overplayed that one. And let's let it go. People will slowly forget who we were. We'll just kind of sink back into the weird
into the bushes.
We'll just
everything is Simpsons references.
Everyone will just kind of they should step down and get out of the way, because otherwise they're going to sit on a company, and every time something goes wrong, and every time we see AI, all these researchers leave, we see the company stumbling. It's all going. Their names are going to come back up over and over and over again in just a self-help version. I would get out of there right now.
This wouldn't
be
the first
investor. I would imagine that also I would probably be like, not just let's get rid of these board members, but let's have a conversation about what the structure of this company is, and to what extent does the nonprofit fully control the for-profit.
And if anyone thought that they were going to create a crazy structure for their company, you can see every VC now is going to be like, no. Like we hear that often when you do a startup, and they're like, no, they don't want anything complicated. They just want you to build a C Corp and have everybody put money into it, and let's not make this complicated. And this they took the chance on, and it is a crazy. I mean, I think it's crazy. It's crazy. Structure. If you look at it, I have it quickly up. Anyway, it's just a crazy structure that they.
It's certainly a wild structure. Like we talked about this. Like it was founded as a nonprofit. That nonprofit still exists, but it controls the for-profit subsidiary, which is a capped profit thing. One thing I want to ask before we move off of this, is it a good thing that maybe the reason it was so complicated is because they kind of had this true belief that AI could destroy us all. Like this was an anti-apocalypse organization. Basically, Altman has talked about, like, he is a doomsday prepper. He is a guy, he has a whole bunker set up somewhere. He could fly to it. He is ready to, survive based on whatever disaster could happen. It's a bunch of people who have very weird visions of the future, basically controlling where AI is going now. Like, do we think, should OpenAI be the ones doing this? Because I feel like that's part of the problem too.
Well, if not them? I mean, at least they had a good intention when they started. I mean, like almost everybody else is just turning the gas on, and not really worried about it. And I think that because a lot of this stuff was open sourced early on or made available, it kind of made it very hard to defend. Like, it's not like you can just shut a company down. It's over. Like the Pandora's box is opened, and there is no way anybody's going to put it back. No ways anyone's going to put it back in the box. And so at this point, you have to kind of write it out. This is what I was looking for before. This is the diagram. And so have this really complex diagram here where you have the you have your you have this, so this is what started, right? And then you have this, they build this holding company for the employees and the investors. And then this is what everybody put their money into down here. And then this controls this. And this has to be, in my opinion, probably simplified.
And meanwhile, the board, like, we should make this clear, the board has no stake in this company. Like in a lot of other companies, if the company gets rich, the board gets rich. Like that is their impetus to make money. Not literally not the thing here. They are trying to stop bad AI. Like that has always been the goal, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a utopian view, I think that made sense. But I think that the thing is that and with no sudden moves, it still makes sense to have a board. But this board that they have right now really belonged as a board of advisors that they talk to, not the board of directors. So the thing is that I think that what they need to do is have a board of advisors that's made from the nonprofit, but the board of directors that makes a decision on who's running the company should be a standard board of director with normal board members that aren't for the most part in academia, and not allowed to, you don't have the board of advisors running with knives, that's not their role. And so this group has to be moved to an advisory role and have the board of directors actually done it. Or give up and let AI dump into the sea, OpenAI, but it's going to go into the sea if they let him go, it's not going to stick around.
Okay,
There's
I have
more.
A question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for all of you guys. We're coming up. We got 2 hours till the deadline. What do you guys think is going to happen? Give me your short predictions.
I don't think the board's going to leave. I think they're going to sit tight because there is no reason for them to. The goal is their fear of like what OpenAI is doing, and I think everything we've seen from Altman is that he is just pushing all the way. Like it doesn't even seem like he has those fears. He just wants the big AI. That's my thing. Let's do this, and then we need to go to an ad for Leo. So let's quickly. What do you guys think?
I give it 75% that I agree with you. The board doesn't change, and within 2 years, OpenAI is kind of a footnote in what happens, and all heck breaks loose. Like in AI, because they're no longer contained by a company that has got this kind of control. 25%, everybody steps down. So Sutskever and everyone connected to them just is gone. So I give it a 75-25.
Anthony.
I think Sam comes back, the board steps down. Maybe there's some sort of concession to sort of save face for them where they get there's some sort of advisory board that they get a representative in, or they get something where they're still like ostensibly involved with the company and its mission. But I think that it's sort of hard to, I think that they probably can see that there's not really a path forward for the company if they stay.
You know what? We will see. I mean, maybe we will have the stamina to just keep going, folks. Like a New Year's Eve show. Like, let's just keep going. Let's keep going till 8.
Just going to keep getting drunker and drunker like Anderson Cooper on New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even if we take a break for a minute and say we're going to be back at 5, like we can't stop the show before
we got to keep going.
Yeah,
this is our duty now. We have we haven't.
We're stuck here.
Yeah. All right, let's check in on Leo with a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Devindra, nice to see you. Thank you for filling in for me while we're watching the cars go around really fast. But I do want to mention my favorite carrier, Mint Mobile, our sponsor for This Week in Tech. From billion-dollar ad budgets and arena naming rights and giant MSG Sphere naming rights in Vegas to tens of thousands of retail locations, those big wireless spenders spend big to appear like, that's it. That's your choice. How do they afford all that? Oh, they don't. You do. You have to pay for it. That's why they bill you so big every month. Well, Mint Mobile had a different idea. Instead of brick and mortar overhead, Mint Mobile is online only. What does that mean for you? Well, a whole lot of savings, because wireless plans from Mint Mobile start at just $15 a month. And everybody I tell this to says, oh, no, that can't be. What's the catch? Or there's some added fees. No added fees, unlimited talk and text nationwide, plus data for just $15 a month. And I know this is true because I use Mint Mobile. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month on the nation's largest 5G network to boot. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You'll keep your same phone number along with all your existing contacts. And by going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail and advertising on the giant sphere in Las Vegas, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan, I say it again because I think maybe you don't believe me. It's true. $15 a month. What are you paying a month now? 5 times that probably, right? $15 a month. Get the plan shipped to your door for free. with a SIM, or if you have eSIM in your phone, you'll do the eSIM thing. They even have phones, great phone deals at Mint Mobile. Go to mintmobile.com/twit. Mint, like the fresh herb, right? Mintmobile.com/twit. I'll say it one more time so it sinks in. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/twit. And now, back to the show.
I don't think Leo, when he recorded that message, just realized like how much he would be missing this conversation. Is there anything else we want to?
In it,
We're in it. This could be a marathon show because I do feel like we at least have to hit that timeline. We have to hit the 8 p.m. thing and just see what happens at the end of this. So sorry, Anthony, but if anybody needs to peel off, you can. Is there anything else we want to add about OpenAI before we move on to anything else?
I one thing that was pointed out during the commercial break, Laura Thompson, who's our question manager, I do a show every morning, and one of the things we get questions from all over the world, and we have to figure out how to pronounce some of the names. And she said, make sure to tell them that we use that every single day. We use ChatGPT. We say, how do you pronounce this person's name? It will break it down into a long, there's like a page of it's this like this and this like this and this like this. And this is how you put this all together. So she pointed out that but those are the kind of things that ChatGPT, especially when it comes to languaging, we do some Q&A, we do some interview shows, and we don't use I'm constantly running it kind of in parallel to the questions where we do interviews. And I ask ChatGPT, give me 10 thoughtful questions for this person. Like it's usually a public person, and it'll give me the questions. And there's like 8 of them that are worthless. There's like 2 of them that are like, that's a good pro tip, because often as I'm rushing to an interview, I'm like on my phone scrambling ideas, I don't know. And again, we don't use those. I don't use them because I don't feel like we're using them. But what we do is when I'm brainstorming how to interview someone, I will say, this is, especially if it's a public person, I'll say, give me 30 questions for this person. And I'll look through them, and it'll bring things up like in your book, literally say in your book, this, and this, you talk about this. What is it like? And I may go, that's a good idea. And then I think about something related to that. And again, it's not a one-for-one connection to it, but it is something that is super useful for brainstorming. And I don't even, I went from not knowing that, never using ChatGPT to feeling like it's like another arm, that I use.
I feel like the key term is Copilot, right? Like I feel like that was a great word that Microsoft used, because it's not like how Elon Musk termed self-driving, right? It is not self-driving. It is not your thing taking full control. It is you being in the pilot seat. You have this little helper right next to you, and you could tap them whenever you need some advice or something. So I think that framing works. Alex, I'm glad to hear
I know a lot of coders that use it every single day, and they do it 2 different things. One is to try to figure out something. How would you program this? And it'll program it, and they go, well, I don't agree with that, but I see where you're going. And it would bring up parts of the code that they hadn't thought of. But the other thing they do is they use it to analyze their code all the time. Show me how this could be more efficient. Show me, analyze this code for this, and it will break it down in incredible detail.
That makes sense. The model should understand computer language, I guess, a little more than I
don't ask
broader intellectual things.
What is the weight of something, or what is the size of something? Or I don't ever ask it to give me hard numbers, because it rarely gets that correct. And that's when you see everyone give you examples of what AI doesn't do well, it's usually they're asking for specific values, and it doesn't do well. Managing language is something it does really well, and languaging stuff that it has. And it also makes, in case you're wondering, if you ever want to make fortune cookies that are Star Trek related, amazing. You can make Klingon cookies. You can make Romulan cookies. You can
wait. Star Trek related fortune cookies?
Oh, you should ask. You got to ask Chat. Give me 10 fortune cookies as a Romulan, and it will give you 10 fortune cookies but then go and do it as a Klingon. It'll be different than the Romulan.
Did you actually make these cookies and distribute them?
No, I just read them off. I didn't make them, but I
feel like baking is a science. ChatGPT can't be getting those right?
No, it didn't get the cookies. It made the sayings, the fortune cookie sayings. It'll do.
Okay, that makes more sense.
That's still pretty.
It didn't give me that.
It's still fun.
I did get it to make me an osh soup that I still eat about once a month. It's so good.
I feel like soup is a good metaphor for the whole current state of AI. I guess just a lot of blending of its things coming together. Sometimes it tastes good. I don't know. Yeah.
I think one other thing about the OpenAI discussion is that as we've read about these sort of different camps within the company, I think that one of my frustrations is it feels like the discussion of AI in Silicon Valley so often just sort of boils down into these sort of two very extreme views of this is the future of everything, or it's the doom of humanity because it's Skynet. And it feels like there are so many more exciting opportunities and things to be afraid of than either of those two things. But it feels like that's kind of what the conversation seems to be boiled down to so often, which I find really frustrating.
The middle way, like I didn't want to bring up this example too much because I don't want to be an AI doomsayer, but I've read a lot of Michio Kaku. I've read a lot of like, the people talking about this stuff in the singularity since the 90s, right? And that's kind of what it is. Like the whole rise of AGI is that dream of creating something that is smarter than us, and then what do? We can't control it. Oh no, be afraid. This whole firing thing feels like if, in the Terminator movie, if somebody went back in time to stop Freeman Dyson, like there you go.
Okay,
like,
that actually is a good point. We haven't considered that this is a Terminator situation and that the members of the board are actually being influenced by someone from the future. I think that's worth putting out there.
That is, yeah, exactly.
Right. And everyone else is sort of the dumb present people who like, if only we knew
and the problem
what
is
future this is leading to.
We'll never know because now the future has been changed. Like they were like, all we have to do is get Altman out of there and then it'll change everything for the future and we'll all survive another century until it takes over.
I mean, we were talking about other ways you could do it. And I think there are other ways you could develop this stuff while still being cautious about it. And I feel like that was like the tact Google was taking for a long time. It's like, yeah, we know they've been working on generative models and they've been working on AI for a decade. They haven't really shown much of it, and they almost seem like afraid of what would happen if they let this stuff out, which is why Bard basically came out half cooked because they were not ready to even do that. They did that because of Bing Chat, So I feel like that is a way, and sometimes I don't know.
I think we lost that way when it got to be when there's so many different companies with so much of the same technology that have it, and a lot of it's open sourced, and a lot of it has been published, and a lot of this stuff. I think the problem is now the cat is fully out of the bag, and I think that I think it would be very, very difficult to put it back in, and so I think that it is. We're now just we have to think about as people, how we dance with this because there is no stopping it. At this point, it's inevitable. And so it's just whatever's happening. So we have to figure, and I think that it does. I really think that AI is going to really empower people who are thinkers, and it does it, but it puts a huge risk. I'm kind of in that middle path of there's a huge risk for about 30% of the population that, that really are going to have a hard time keeping up with doing something better than the computer does. People who are creative and kind of building up new ideas and so on and so forth get an enormous heads, so someone who's thinking of stories but can't draw, or suddenly, within the next 2 or 3 years, will just be able to sit there and talk and get, images back and forth. I actually do that with ChatGPT now. I'm like, give me this image, and then I'll say, but take that person out, but then put this back in, and then do this, and then I get an image that I wanted. So I couldn't draw that image, and even if I could, it would have taken me to model and animate that, or model and render the image that I created in ChatGPT in 15 minutes. Would take me probably a week. And that's if I knew exactly what I wanted.
Sure. I mean, you could have paid an illustrator to do that too, but that would also take time.
And it still would have taken a week, and it would have cost me to do the image that I'm talking about would have cost me probably, $3,000 to $5,000 and a week of time to get done. Something I got done in 15 minutes.
That's the worry though. Like I've definitely been hearing from a lot of creators, musicians and artists who are looking at this and looking at like, a lot of the creative process, the things that do take a week just get kind of dumbed down and simplified. And, you do it and a couple seconds later, you get a full, beautiful image, which is based on, stuff that already exists. Like I do wonder about creator fairness there. I think there's still a lot of stuff we have to iron out, which is why we just had a major, writer strike and the actors strike. And it's everything we're still dealing with. Like Alex, you have a sense, like the Hollywood machine. How do you think like Hollywood is looking at AI at this point? We're still waiting for the SAG stuff, right?
Well, I mean, I think that the issue is that obviously the producers want to take full advantage of this, and the writers to some degree want to take advantage of it too. They want to be able to say, how would you say this if they're doing let's say a military style thing? How would you say this as a special forces operator, and then it gives them the text back, and that's going to make their thing better than it was before. So the writers don't want to give up AI; they just don't want the producers to use it to replace them, And so what they're and right now, if you have AI, if you have ChatGPT write your script, it's a solid, C level, B level script. It's the kind of thing on a Saturday afternoon, or maybe half of the Netflix stuff that's out there. It'd probably be competitive with it, of what it writes. If you say, I want this and everything else. But they know that it'll get better, and as it keeps training, it's going to keep on getting much better at what it does, and that's what they're concerned about. With the actors, obviously the actors are concerned about their digital likeness and being able to replace them, and we're already seeing a lot of that. We're already replacing a lot of the, I was replacing actors, not really, but when I worked on Star Wars Episode 1, and I was animating thousands of droids, so I wasn't animating them one by one. I was building a cloud simulation system or a replication system, and then I had to set up a bunch of rules about why, don't run into each other. If you see one that's on the other side, shoot at it. You build a bunch of rules of what it needs to do when it does those things. This has gotten a lot more in depth, and so and if you look at like what Weta built, there's a program back in the early Lord of the Rings called Massive, which is all designed to build those things out, and all of that stuff is getting much better. So a lot of the extras, a lot of the actor stuff was concerned about. You have a bunch of extras. If I scan you, if I take a bunch of, and we have these trucks that you can go into that have 150 cameras, and you walk in and you put your hands in a certain way, and it just snaps the photo, and it has a model. And we have you do. It was originally built for like 2K games to do. Yep. Basketball players, right? But it'll capture someone. You get a couple different motions and a couple different facial expressions, and we can do almost anything with you at a distance. And so that's the concern they have. I'm going to pay you for a day rate, let's say $150 for the day to walk around in the background, but I captured you. I never have to pay you again. So. And the problem is that's how a lot of actors get into the business. Mm-hmm. So if you take that on ramp out, it makes it harder and harder for people to get started. And so that's what the actors are really fighting. That's what they were really fighting for, was trying in the AI world. There's a lot of other things they were fighting for, but that's what they were really trying to stop, is this ability to cut, not the high end actors that can always negotiate and put in their contract that says you can't use my likeness without paying me. They can all put that in there. In fact, some of these actors have been getting scanned for the last 20, 25 years, so they can license their likeness back to the producers when you want to show them when they were 25 and now they're 65. Mm-hmm. They've been capturing themselves as a service for, some of them for 20 or 30 years now. And but it's the middle line actors and the low end actors that are all the kind of the starting actors that are all trying to make sure that they still have a job. It will never be the speaking roles. Maybe someday, but it probably won't be the speaking roles, because we're having enough trouble with visual effects as it is. If you look at Marvel movies and lots of special effects movies, the lack of physics, the lack of detail is stuff that people are getting tired of as it is. So they have their own challenges with computer graphics, and that's so they're not going to want necessarily the actors to be that person, but there's a lot of people that are out of focus behind them that could be replaced pretty quickly and are already being replaced. And so that's what the actors are trying to figure out. I don't think they got as much as they wanted, but they got some.
They got something. I want to shout out I reference this movie a lot, but the Ari Folman movie, The Congress, which I think is like an undersung little sci-fi indie thing about actors basically giving up their likenesses and digitally selling them. Basically, it stars Robin Wright, who goes through this process, but also once you do that, you can never act again. So it's sort of like it's a Black Mirror version of that concept, and it inevitably leads to like some sort of dystopia as well. But I think the movie is really smart about it, it's just funny to see like us following a similar path to things we've seen there. I believe that was a Stanislaw Lem story too that was originally based on. So beautiful movie. Worth checking out right now if you're thinking about all this stuff. Yeah. Paris, Anthony, any thoughts about like where AI is taking us at this point?
I think for me, one of the things that I'm more worried about than like runaway technology, though certainly that's a possibility, is the feeling. And I think this speaks to also, why the Hollywood strikes were so emotional, is because it's also this suspicion that the people in charge are excited about the prospect of cutting humans as much out of the process as possible. And certainly that's something I saw, having spent a couple of years in the VC industry, is that there are people who just are sort of salivating at the possibility of like, boy, won't it be great when we don't have to deal with the pesky talent? And so I think there's also just an emotional component of kind of like, screw you, you're so excited to replace us with robots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Paris, like, I don't know, like, how are you feeling about like where AI is taking us in terms of art and media?
I think it's complicated. I mean, I think right now we're at a stage where we're talking about a lot of these consequences, yet they're still a bit off, they're far off, at least when we're talking about immediate consequences. Like, it doesn't seem like actors are fully being replaced by AI in any scalable way. And I think that the current quality of large language models isn't up to snuff at the point where it could fully replace writers. I think that my answer to that question is I'm feeling positive about it, but not in the way that you'd think, just because I think the recent strikes we've seen from the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA, it's really been heartening to me to see people come together en masse to advocate for specific labor issues. And I think that AI has been an instigating factor in that in a way that has been quite interesting.
This year has been a wake-up call in many ways. Also, this is not entirely a new thing. I remember during production of the Matrix sequels, there were rumors that, Jet Li was going to play a role in one of those. And famously, like, I think he said at one point, like, he refused to play, I think it was Seraph in the second and third movies, but he refused to play that role because they wanted to copy him. They wanted to capture his moves and his likeness, probably to put into the game. Because like there was a great like transmedia thing happening around the Matrix at that point. And I totally respect that. I feel like he saw ultimately what could have happened. Would have liked to see him in that movie, but also respect for like keeping your craft, and keeping it your own, not letting it be resold in ways you can't control. I think like that's ultimately it, right?
Yeah, I think that they wanted to. I think he thought that they wanted to do one thing with it, and they were really just trying to do visual effects with it. I mean, they needed to capture to do. If you look at the scenes that Seraph was in, there was a lot of need for, a digital version of him, which only kind of worked back then. If you look at the Neo shot, they were like, it's okay,
it's okay.
They were telling the story, I guess. But I think that is, I think that's what his concern was, and I think he thought that they might do something else with it. But I think I think what was driving there was the visual effects. And again, I think that in some ways we're going back to more organic visual effects to try to find a way to have it feel more real. And I think that I do think that one thing that we're going to start to see is kind of like American made. There's going to be, I think, when we look at social media, when we look at other things, there's going to be an imprint of this is a human, like this is human made. This is certified human, stuff, just like being organic. I guess you could call it organic in some cases.
It's organic.
It's organic media, and I think that people promising that, YouTube is talking about doing that, where they require you to declare any AI that might be used inside of your product. So it's kind of the same thing of like any GMOs or any kind of Roundup. You have to, to tell us that you're putting it in there. And so I think that that's going to be a really interesting process and I think that that's what Elon Musk in a kind of a ham-fisted way is trying to do with Twitter, which is that I'm going to, try to separate people from the potentially, what might be the bots. And it's not, I don't think he's succeeding. I don't think his execution is great, but I kind of see where he's going.
I mean, I almost feel like somebody had mentioned this at one point, but his mistake was he thought the bots were fake people, were fake commentary, and he thought like the real people were actually bots. Like he fundamentally misunderstood what people were saying on Twitter, unfortunately.
Bots are a huge problem, though. I mean,
bots are a huge problem, but they're a bigger problem now. They're a bigger problem like after like Musk's takeover.
I mean, in social media, the real danger are the bots, not because of what they say, but because of what they like. So the acceleration of posts that are done by real people by bots and other automated systems is really one of the most dangerous parts of social media right now. It's not that a bot is generating stuff. It's that they're liking and and retweeting, or whatever they call it now, reposting in all of these platforms. And I've seen ones where I said something that seemed to be random, Like it was not like a particularly whatever. And for whatever reason, the bots decided that this was a useful thing for whatever they were trying to tell. And I suddenly, I mean, I get 20,000 impressions a day or whatever, 10,000 impressions a day, 5,000, like somewhere in those ranges. And suddenly I was getting 200,000 impressions a day for a month. Like it was just
yeah.
It was just
we don't know fully what's behind it.
I had no idea. Like I couldn't even figure out what was doing that. I was just like, it was like magic, but whatever it was, I don't even know what, I mean, I know what it was a tweet about, my general dislike of some government agency, so I'm sure that it was just telling a larger story of something. I was just frustrated. And then it was probably like the DMV. I was mad and I said something. I can't even remember what it was. It was years ago, but I was amazed. And that's when I really understood how dangerous bots were. It wasn't what they were posting. It was what they're accelerating.
Mm-hmm. Back to what we were talking about before, just a little bit. I do want to say, I think the Mission Impossible movies, worth pointing out, now mostly sold with Tom Cruise saying he's doing a lot of this stuff. That is why a lot of people are going to see them. And I'm a big fan of that series, even number 2. And, I think there is something to it. It is very strange to go from seeing Marvel movies where people aren't actually even wearing costumes, right? They're just wearing suits that can be digitally re-altered for whatever. So they're not wearing clothes. They're not wearing superhero outfits. What is actually going on? I kind of felt that a lot in Ant-Man Quantumania, where that entire movie felt artificially generated. It felt like a game. Yeah, it felt like a game. There's also just no life to it. So I feel like that was the thing for me. Whereas even a so-so Mission Impossible movie like the last one, I didn't think it was good as the other McQuarries, but there were still really cool practical effects in there that I really appreciated. And also combining digital and real things. Like there's Tom Cruise hanging from a train car that's falling off a cliff, right? It is still him hanging from a real location. So you kind of get the sense of those things are happening. But yeah, organic things, organic media, I feel like could be the next big thing. I want to talk about something that also happened this week that I thought was going to be the main story. Honestly, it was a thing I thought never was going to happen. And it's a very geeky thing, but I think our audience will appreciate it. And that was the news when Apple announced out of nowhere that it's supporting RCS. And that is specifically, yay, Apple supports acronym. Specifically, that means that it's going to be interoperable. iMessage is going to be interoperable with Android phones to deliver RCS features like higher
group
quality
chats.
Yeah, group chats, higher quality images, videos, location sharing, things like that. It's not going to be dinky SMS to iPhones. I believe the reporting is that those things coming from Android people will still be green bubbles because that's how Apple rolls. But, I thought this was kind of fun. And it's also fun because I think just the day before or recently, the company Nothing, the phone company Nothing, which is the worst name in the world, kind of made a splash where they were saying we're going to bring iMessage to Android phones. We have this whole thing. They were working together with Sunbird, which is a project that has basically hacked a way to enable you to post iMessage messages from Android phones. And the way it does that is basically they're running a server farm of Mac Minis that these messages get rerouted to. So that's fun.
No security issues there at all.
No security issues there.
No problems. Don't look too closely.
Don't look too closely.
Messages through somebody else's computers, and sure, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Nothing announced this thing earlier this week, and I think a lot of us were looking at this and being like, "Oh, I remember when the Palm Pre thought it could use iTunes to sync music, and that did not work out so well. But also, I've been in this game for too long. I think that's what I learned is I remember these things. Apple will kill this stuff. Not too long after that, I think it was after the RCS news, we saw that Nothing was pulling its iMessage compatible chats app, and specifically the iMessage stuff to the Nothing phones. It was going to go to the Nothing 2 phone, which Nothing says has sold to 6 figures of people across North America and parts of Europe. So not many people. This was not a very scalable solution. But Nothing, they posted a message saying we've removed the Nothing Chats beta from the Play Store and will be delaying the launch until further notice to work with Sunberg to fix several bugs. We apologize for the delay and we'll do right by their users.
I think it was specifically security bugs.
Right. It is security bugs. Let me see here. 9 to 5 Google pointed out that Nothing Chats doesn't have end-to-end encryption. They found that the attachments sent by other users could easily be accessed in plain text, baby. The findings, I'm reading from our Engadget report of this right now. The findings added support to concerns voiced by others that Sunbird uses HTTP instead of HTTPS. What are we even doing?
Might as well just be writing our text messages on a stone tablet and passing them around at this point.
I mean, basically, so.
I think that there's been a lot of back and forth with the EU and Apple related to this in the fact that Apple doesn't really think it, and it's complicated to say that Apple is a gatekeeper with iMessage because iMessage is such a small part of the European market, and so it's like it's just so few people use. There are people who use it. I said on another show that nobody uses it because I don't know anybody in Europe that uses iMessage. They're all on WhatsApp. And so there, so it seems like a really small percentage of the users to call it that. And so that this pressure was coming down the pike. I think that what Apple has been exceptional at is delaying action. And so what they do is they do enough as they talk to the regulators to get people to just stop doing things. And so they promise things. How long it takes and how it's implemented, the devil is in the details, and Apple's really good at these details. Like, for instance, people said, well, Apple finally gave up and gave USB-C to the iPhone. Apple didn't give up. Apple delayed the release of USB-C for years as they slowly worked it into, they were already building, before the EU even got into this, they were already building USB-C devices. They were turning everything over to USB-C. Their computers.
It's so hard, guys. It's so hard to get that connected.
Oh, no. It just, it took them time. And so what they did is they just kept on getting them to delay it until they were good and ready. And then the iPhone dropped into a USB-C model, but it went on Apple's timeline, not on the EU's timeline.
Oh, absolutely.
And in RCS, we don't know how, we don't know how long it will take. My guess is RCS.
They said later next year. So
later next year, probably somewhere near December 20th. Because it'll put everybody in a hold cycle. Well, Apple's doing something, and then it comes out and they're going, "Hey, we're just going to test the model. We're not going to, we won't turn everything on immediately. We're going to do it piece by piece." And so that starts to slow down that process, and it could be another, year and a half or 2 years before it's fully implemented. I mean, and what's interesting again is that Europe is not where it's the most affected. It's really in the United States. I have two teenagers. 87%. I think the last thing was 87% of teenagers are on iPhones, and I asked my kids, I was like, so is the green bubble a big deal? They're like, oh, it's no joke. It was like, nobody wants to have a green bubble. But it seems that it's past. They're not complaining about interoperability. They just don't want the green bubble. So Apple,
it's the cachet. Yeah.
Wait, 87% of teenagers have an iPhone specifically? That's incredible.
18. Oh, it's an incredible number. It's a very frightening number. It worries everybody forever because they're in that ecosystem. They're going to stay in that ecosystem. Their kids are going to be in that ecosystem.
This is what Apple always wanted, right?
Because when Google freaked out. Yeah.
Google totally freaked out. But I remember in the 90s too, where it was like, the Mac users were always like kind of like a small portion of the pie, and always like the designers and the cool kids and the artists. And by the time I was supporting Macs and PCs at like 2001, I was in college at the point. I was like, okay, I see the clear delineation here. Apple will never reach mainstream. Like, they are just too cordoned off. Like, they can't do it with the Mac. Arguably, they will never do it with the Mac because the Mac is still a weird little thing, which I still like using quite a bit, but PCs will always win. And then like iPhone was like the perfect thing. Just like raise people on the iPhone, right? And then they'll never leave.
Yeah, and the problem is that they have, most kids that I know, my kids included, hate the Chromebooks like with a passion. And it's not just because they have to do their schoolwork on them. They're just bad machines, and so they're extremely underpowered. They can't connect all the things they want to it. They can't get it to do what they, so it's completely useless other than to do their homework on, and it's barely useful for that. And so, so the thing is that, so they're building this dislike for Google inside of school. And so part of this is that dislike of the Chromebooks that were supposed to standardize people on using Google stuff is not having that effect. And it's because it's so, as a parent, it's so frustrating to watch. Like
Google's so bad at this. Like this is the Google philosophy, by the way, of like failing at user experience. Right.
Yeah,
I feel like that's often it.
And so the kids have this great experience. Like my kids have iPads and they have other things at home, and they have, and they'll do their entire presentations on iPads, and then they'll they'll do the whole thing on Keynote, and then they'll just push it out as images and then load it into slides because that's what they're required to do. And then they, and then they hand them in, And so the thing is that they, but the green bubble, I think that the question really is will it matter by the time RCS happens?
Mm-hmm.
If the green bubble stays there, the stigma for kids, and again, I don't think Apple's looking at the rest of it. And we have to understand that, now kids are moving more and more in the United States, not in the rest of the world. Because when you talk to the rest of the world, a lot of them are on Android, a lot of them. The United States is a pretty big market. And for Apple, and the biggest, and the issue is that the kids are that green bubble, that it's a more of a herd problem than an actual functional problem. And I don't think that Apple will do things like, I think that there'll be some interoperability, but I don't think they're going to move Memojis over. I don't think they're going to move a lot of the things, those aren't going to work over on Android. And so all those little tie-ins that we think as adults are crazy, the Memojis and all these other things that they're adding to iMessages are going to keep kids like, well, I still can't send that to you over RCS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to,
I think, the one thing that'll be a big make or break is if you can do like the double exclamation point react or like heart react.
Yeah, you're not going to send.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work then. It's going to be the same stigma.
And I think that Apple is going to accelerate over the next year and a half as they make RCS available. They're going to accelerate tons and tons of features that they're building into iMessage that aren't going to be available to RCS. And so you're going to keep that division there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not, and so it's still going to feel that you're going to go into RCS and it's still going to feel like it's getting dumbed down.
It's listen, all I need is bare minimum functionality, Alex. Like I'm so tired of getting videos from my family. I hit play. I'm so excited to see what my nephew's doing. It's in like 240p. It's in like 240p.
Oh, are you an Android guy?
No,
Why do you do
I'm
this
an iPhone person.
Oh.
But the Android people sending videos to me, it ends up looking like garbage because it comes through MMS.
You just can't be friends with Android.
You can't be friends with them, but they're my family. I can't dub them, unfortunately.
Sorry, wait. What's our split here? We got any Android guys? We have any Chromebook users in the panel?
Oh man.
Or is this an oops all Mac situation? Are we all Apple pilled?
Biased panel.
I'm a Windows guy mainly, but I have learned to support Macs because I gotta, and that's also what my job gives me. But as an IT guy, I had to learn to live in both worlds, certainly. And then Chromebooks started happening, and I think the idea of a cheap, super cheap computer that you could give out to kids is a great one. Unfortunately, Google is Google, right? And almost at every level of experience, of customer experience, they fail as a company. So anyway, I get a lot of hate for this over at the Engadget podcast. So my email is devindra@engadget.com. You can just send me the hate right there. Sorry, Chrome.
Wait, so you're rocking an iPhone and a PC?
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Why would you do this to yourself?
Why not?
You got to choose one or the other.
No. You could totally live, and actually Microsoft's whole push to be like, oh, well, we lost on mobile, but here are all our apps on iPhone, right? And here's our apps contiguously. The only thing I don't have is iMessage like on my desktop, and that's going to be solved. I'm fine. I can live without that fully.
I don't know. I just shot a 4K 30 Apple ProRes HQ.
Mm-hmm.
A video of my daughter's first concert gig. She's a drummer for a band.
Amazing.
And I shot it, and I was like, I can't believe I just generated a 38 gig file in 7 minutes, on my phone. Then there was the challenge. Okay, well, how do I get it off the phone? But it's I think that Apple is, I have two PCs on my desk right now. I have two PCs and 7 Macs. So I'm
sorry, did you say 7 Macs on you have a total of 9 computers on your desk right now?
Yeah. I have a lot of screens as well. So there are a lot of things are feeding data.
How many screens do you have in comparison to 9 computers?
2, 3, 4, 8 screens. But so I have 9 computers, and the problem is a lot of the computers have one computer is sucking up 4 of those screens, and other computers. So I have an 8x8 HDMI matrix so I can reset it for different things. So if I'm teaching a class or speaking or doing a live show, the screens all become something different based on what I'm doing. So
this is my dream. I want more monitors. Right now I'm still testing. I'm testing a 49-inch gaming monitor that I reviewed.
Mine are they're all 24-inch. They're all 1080p because they all into my mini. I have an ATEM Mini Extreme, and so because it's 1080p, all my monitors are 1080p because all the computers have to be 1080p. So I have lots of 1080p monitors.
Oh, I mean, I feel like both a blessing and a curse then, Alex. I don't know. Like you have so many monitors, but
they're all
1080,
on swings. So they all, I just grab onto them and move them where I need them to be, you know, so I get used to that. And the idea of one big monitor, I got a 43-inch monitor that I was going to put in there. I just can't figure out where to put it.
That's a TV at that point.
It's a TV, actually. It's a TV.
I mean, if you have 8 movable monitors, you can make yourself like a computer cocoon at some point where you're just, you can't see anything. You're just plugged in.
I'm cutting back. When I first built this, it was 16 monitors. And
my God. What do you put on 16 monitors?
So I have a lot of times when I'm doing, I got into it because I was building live shows. Live classrooms. I've got a media school in Rwanda. So we have a media school in Rwanda, and I had to teach classes there from home, which is in San Francisco. And so I had to build a classroom rig so that I could teach. And so we started adding things, and you're like, oh, I really need the live feedback from them, and I really need to see what's happening on this app, and I really need to see a countdown clock, and and not all the screens are the same size. I've got a couple little ones up here that are like the time of day and the countdown clock, and that's what the PCs do, time of day, because they're really cheap. They're like these little $250 PCs.
Have you heard of this thing called a clock? It's kind of like a computer, but it's smaller.
You need the big clock.
It is a clock. It's just on a screen, and I can.
It's just a clock. It's just part of my 8 HDMI cords setup.
It looks so much nicer, and it constantly checks atomic time, and anyway. So I have, and then we do a show every morning. So I've got different chats coming in, and I have instruction sets, and I have, again, the things that I'm my run of show and things like that. So there's just a lot of things that I like to have as a heads up display. And if you do this for 10 years, you end up with a lot. And then the reason I have so many computers is when I do presentations, my keynote presentations, I have a presentation, and I have I think I used it earlier. I have a little telestrating app that I developed.
I love that. I want to be able to draw on my video chat. But you know what? I want to hear more about our setups, actually. But let's check in on Leo at the F1 Grand Prix, because I think he has some words from a sponsor.
Yes, it's me again. Hi. Sorry to interrupt, Devindra, but our show today brought to you by ExpressVPN. Again, something I use every day, and so I thought I'd be best to tell you about it. Look, we all spend too much time on our phones these days, buying groceries, sending pictures to friends, maybe, I don't know, ordering a car to the airport. The scary part is your phone carrier is collecting data on every single thing you do. Verizon even says, yeah, sure, we do it, so we can quote, better understand your interests, so we can then better sell your interests to the highest bidder. That's the whole point, right? All the sites you visited, what you've been up to online, who you're buying things from, the more they can get on you, the larger their paycheck becomes, which is why, one of the many reasons really, why I use ExpressVPN on my phone. ExpressVPN is an app. It prevents your phone carrier from being able to see what you're doing. They can't see the sites you visit. They can't sell that information off to third parties. It's easy to use. It goes on iOS. It goes on Android. It goes on Mac, Windows. You can put it on your TV set. You can put it on your router, because they're all snooping on you, right? One tap of the button, all of your network activity is suddenly encrypted and rerouted through ExpressVPN secure servers for ultimate privacy. And not only does it shield your web browsing, ExpressVPN protects all your network data so you can stay private even while you're using apps. That's a big difference. Whether you're on an iPhone, an Android device, even a tablet user, ExpressVPN works on everything. And the best part is one subscription can be used on up to 5 devices at the same time. So your whole family can use ExpressVPN too. I love this thing. And let me tell you, it's very important that you choose the right VPN, because they see all the stuff that your carrier would see. You got to have a VPN provider you trust, like ExpressVPN. They go the extra mile, make sure they don't log anything. It's in their privacy policy. That's been vetted by a trusted third party. It's also the way they design their secure server, the trusted server they call it, which runs in RAM's sandbox, so it can't write to the hard drive. And when you press the button to exit, it goes away like that, as does every trace of your visit. Gone. And as if that weren't enough, they run their servers on a custom Debian distribution that overwrites the hard drive every day. Every reboot, everything's gone. I mean, you could that's belt and suspenders. You couldn't do a better job of making sure your privacy is protected. When your phone carrier, when your ISP, when anybody tracks you, that is a gross invasion of privacy. You can either let them keep cashing in on you or visit expressvpn.com/twit and get that same VPN I use and recommend. Take back your online privacy today. Use our link to get 3 extra months free with a 1-year package. expressvpn.com/twit. expressvpn.com/twit. I use it. I recommend it. Give it a try. Thank you, ExpressVPN. Now back to Devendra.
Thanks so much, Leo. And now I really want to know. I'm curious. That we've been diving into Alex's whole setup here. Paris and Anthony, what are your setups like? Because you're both like New Yorkers living in cramped apartments. What can you survive? What can you use at this point?
Yeah, I've got like I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment. I've got a kind of cubby set up. That's my office here. I just have one monitor. My laptop is next to me plugged in, which is a second screen. Honestly, the only crazy thing about my setup is I am obsessed with the feeling of typing on a laptop, a MacBook specifically, which I know ergonomically is terrible for me. I shouldn't like it. I shouldn't want it, but I crave it.
Laptops. It's pretty good.
I know. It's good, but it's not. I should have one of those weird things where your hands look like they're, I don't know, on like a roller ball or something. But so I've gotten a Apple keyboard, an Apple trackpad, and I ordered this like custom acrylic case. I don't know if my thing that holds it. Like it is a MacBook bottom, but it is just sitting on my desk. It rules.
I feel like that is a thing designed for psychopaths. How did you find that?
I got it on Etsy from some Chinese supplier that I think like custom poured it or something. I don't know. It fits perfectly. I love it. I can carry it around the house if I want to. I don't. I keep it exactly on my desk, perched with my hands on it at all times.
This is amazing.
That's how I live my life.
I know I can trust you, Paris, because you went for the trackpad and not the Magic Mouse. So, like, literally, trackpad is the only way to go.
That's the thing, is a mouse just feels wrong to me at this point. I live a trackpad life, and I had to get this because using it without the case, sometimes your hands brush up against the trackpad, and I'm like, I can't have that. I need to have maximum speed.
Also, the Apple mice are awful. I'm still awful.
I have a track ball because I don't have any more desk space. Like, so there's like, I just can't move around, and it's connected to a bunch of other things. And so but now, Paris, what are you using for your accents in the back? It looks really nice. Like it's a really great.
In the back, I just have a neon light from Hey, the kind of design company. It's just behind my like in between my couch and my credenza. But other than that, I've just got
What camera are you using?
Oh, I'm using a Canon EOS Rebel T7, which I just have hooked up as my webcam using Mac Utility Pro.
It's the way to go.
It really is. I started doing this during the pandemic because I was like, oh, I have such a crappy webcam. I'm always on Zoom. What do some of the streamers I've like seen use?
What if you had the best camera?
No, but I mean, that's the thing is I was like, what if I was like, I'll spend a couple $100s, but then I realized all these streamers are using DSLR cameras. I'm like, I have a Canon camera that's been sitting in my drawer for years. I haven't used. Why not just plug it in? And it's perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Anthony, I know you're in Harlem, but you at least have a separate room to be.
I do have a separate room, but I basically live like a caveman. I just have a MacBook Air. That's it. There's no special keyboard, no special monitor. And I have no like defense of this except that it's like what I'm used to and what I like.
Oh, good.
I think it actually has worked out well for me in the sense that I think one of the very few good habits I have is I don't open too many tabs. And I feel like if I had like a giant monitor, I would just go crazy with like 10 million tabs and applications and everything. And I'm like better able to focus. I used to have one of the Canon Rebel cameras too, because they sent it to us, all of us, for when we were doing virtual events for TechCrunch. But then I left TechCrunch, and even though they were kind of like, you can probably keep it and we're not going to complain, I was like, no, I don't want to get a letter from you guys a year from now saying, send me the camera back. So I just did it.
Awesome.
Wow,
awesome. I love to hear how everybody's working. Like right now, I have to send this monitor back by now. But ultra wide monitors are the name of the game. Like that is the way to live. And I'm waiting for, I'm sure Apple's probably going to think about that at some point. Like everyone's waiting for a bigger screen iMac, and it seems like that's not going to happen at the current point, but maybe a bigger, cinema display that people would be into. I think that'd be cool. Ultra wide monitors, they're the way to go, because otherwise it is like you're sitting in front of a big TV, right? And when I play games on this thing, I'm playing Alan Wake 2, and I'm in Alan Wake 2. It's like you're in it without wearing a VR headset, and I see the appeal now. I used to poo-poo 49-inch monitors. I was all about 34 inches, but I could see why going wide is good, and also I get so many windows. It's super, super useful. I want to bring us back to Apple and tech standards, by the way, because we saw the news that Qi 2's the Qi 2 wireless standard is almost here. It's coming. It uses MagSafe, like it literally uses the MagSafe connector because Apple basically shared the technology with them. It's coming soon. The iPhone 15 will be the first phones to fully support it. Qi 2 is more efficient. It could charge up to 15 watts, much, much faster than the original one. And then having that magnetic hook, I think, is like a big selling point too. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Because I do feel like this is the thing that will make a lot more people at least look at wireless charging more so than just getting more cables.
I use wireless in my car. So so I have a Peak Design makes one where there's a case. This is I took it off for a variety of reasons, but it's one of these cases and it's got my wallets here, but this I just snap onto my car and it charges. And it's nice to have it be something that I don't have to think about. I just snap it onto my car. I now have my map.
It's secure. Yeah.
Secure, and it does a really good job at doing that. But I don't use it anywhere else. Like I have to admit, I don't use any wireless. I have this host of cables coming out of this one, the two different chargers sitting here that are a mixture of USB-C and my watch charger. And and I have to admit, part of it is that I hate the watch charger so much that
it's terrible.
It slides off a little bit. Then I come back to it. I'm like, it didn't charge at all. And so I get so frustrated with my watch charger. I think it kind of bled off into, I'm not interested in doing, wireless except for my car. So, but I haven't really used it anywhere else. I've got a couple of them and they just I can't figure out where to put them and that kind of thing. So.
Is your car CarPlay as well, or do you not have to worry about that?
A very old car. I have an old, it's more like a truck. It's like a Dodge Caravan. I spend money on gear. I do not spend money on cars because they don't.
I mean, now cars are basically gear, at least the way I'm looking at some of the newer high-tech cars. Yeah.
I mean, you've got to afford 8 to 16 monitors at any given time.
I know. And I'm constantly like changing my camera, and I get stuff. I get Mac Minis, and I get things like that. I'm not. I don't. My car doesn't. What
camera are you using, Alex? It looks fantastic.
I am currently using. Thank you. I'm currently using the Sony EVZ1, which is their full frame kind of blogger camera, which is a little tricky because if I don't put the battery, there's a battery replacement with a little wire.
Oh yeah, I got a dummy battery too.
You need a dummy battery, and you need to swing the door, the monitor open, or it'll overheat. So it took me a little while to it'll just shut off all the time for me. And so it'll overheat left on. And so it was a little bit of a tricky thing. And I was like, should I keep this and everything else? But it's the full frame is nice. It works out well and it's really small. I mean, it's about as small as you can make it. They have another one called that isn't out yet. That's just the size of enough to put enough to put the lens on. So it's even smaller than this one. But anyways, I use that. I was coming from an FX30, which is I have a mobile kit. Like when I go on, I have like a Pelican case 1510 that is my little I'm on the road Pelican case, so that it's got all my lights and stuff like that because I still have to do my show. So so the FX30 went into there. It's a Super 35 sensor. So yeah.
Wow.
Alex, like if you had a more modern car and you were worried about CarPlay, do you feel like even there, like maybe you'd reconsider it? Because with a lot of CarPlay, you have to plug in if it's not wireless CarPlay. So then I don't know. I've had to juggle that too because I did buy the wireless mount, and I'm like,
it's so funny. My office is so I'm speaking somewhere, and I said, hey, they said it was in Berkeley, and they were like, can you come to speak? And I was like, how about I just come from my office? Do you support Zoom? Because I have way more tools than you do about to talk. And so I was like, I don't really want to come, but at the same time, my car is about as caveman as you can get in the sense that I go through the headphone jack to get the music into the car, and I have to pull. I have to pull it because the connection is bad. So I pull it and then I wrap it around a couple of the dials and then tape.
This is making me sad
to do it. Like I have because I only drive. I mean, I barely drive a lot.
That's fair.
But when my daughter and I go to like the farmers markets or whatever. We want to listen to music, and there's always this weird thing we do with the cable. And I keep on saying, eventually I'm going to tear this radio out and put a new one in that's all high tech and does CarPlay and everything else. But I haven't got around to it yet.
Anthony, any use for this, the new wireless tech, or are you using any right now?
No, I mean, that was actually going to be my question for, I was like, I still don't feel like I understand what the use case is for this.
Well, because it's been bad, right? Like I think the experience for wireless charging has been legit bad, and it feels like something being marketed to us because, you can't do as much. You can't hold your device, right, and use it while you're wirelessly charging. That seems like a big problem. It has to be in the right spot. Otherwise, you lose the charge, and then you pick it up an hour later, and you're like, "Oh, I'm screwed for the day," basically, because this thing didn't fully charge. The Qi 2 connection with the MagSafe stuff, I think, solves a lot of that. I've been using a Belkin MagSafe wireless connector in my bedroom. It has a little kickstand, so it holds the phone up, landscape mode, so it can do the alarm mode thing. I find that to be really interesting because, sure, I could just plug in a cable. But when I'm ready to go to bed, like I don't even have to like think about like getting a cable into a port. I just kind of like slap this thing on, and it's like I don't know what, a slap bracelet. Basically, it's like a nice slap, a nice thunk. I could hold up the iPhone 15 Pro from the cable, like it's secure enough to do that. So I think that is useful. It's a fun thing to have on my nightstand. But now I kind of want to do more wireless stuff everywhere, and I can occasionally put my AirPod Pro case on it. So I find that useful. I'm just pointing out this story because it is kind of I think it is rare to see Apple like working hand in hand to basically bring its tech to existing standards. Probably because I guess this helps them too, right? There are more wireless accessories, better for iPhone users in general, right?
Is it good for the battery to be like have fast charging for like that over time, or is that more harmful for it?
When you plug in, it's much, much faster. Like when you plug in, those could
like, does that impact the battery's life over time? Or
supposedly our iPhones are smart enough. If you actually look at the battery app, it'll tell you like the charging schedule, and basically they learn your schedule over time. They know if you get up at 8 a.m., it'll like charge almost by like 6 or 7 a.m. and then like it'll continue like closer to 8. So like Apple has put in tech to kind of prevent it, but we're all worried about batteries. But batteries degrade over time. You can't really prevent it, but I think the tech Apple's building into it is good. And Qi 2 seems really useful. So yeah, I'm glad we're making some progress there. Are you guys more interested in wireless if you could get a magnet to safely connect to your phone or something?
I feel like just like fundamentally, like it's not like the thing about charging that bothers me is not the wires. So I feel like it doesn't. But that said, I mean, I'm totally open to the possibility that like just in this, like the way that I first used AirPods and before I was like, what is the point of this? I don't need it. And then I was like, I don't think I'm going back to wired headphones. Maybe that'll happen with wireless charging. I sort of doubt it.
I could see you getting like a cute one, like a nice one for your desk, right? When you sit down at your computer to start working, you don't have to go fiddle and find the cable. You just like plop it there, do your thing, take it when you leave, right?
I have to admit, I just like plopping. I charge it at night when I go to bed, and I never have to charge it any other time. Now, the one caveat is I don't have any Meta apps on it, which just destroy your battery. Like the Meta apps are, and the reason I don't put them on is not because I have some paranoia or some anti-Meta whatever. I just like my battery to work, and so by taking all the Meta apps off my computer, off my whatever they were doing, they just were chewing up my battery. And I learned early on that if I take the Meta apps off my battery, the other thing I do is I have it on Do Not Disturb all the time. so it just doesn't do a lot. And so because of that, I'm usually at half or a quarter when at the end of the day every day. So I charge it once at night. When I get up in the morning, it's full, and I almost never have to think about a charger again for the rest of the day.
My phone has almost died, I think 2 or 3 times today. It has been in the single digit percentages. I did plug it in last night. Maybe it came unplugged. Maybe I've used it too much. I'm constantly in a state of running out of battery, and I don't think wireless charging is going to probably change that. I
mean, if you put something conveniently like where you sit often, right?
That's the thing. Is I just currently have chargers everywhere. But also, I disagree. I think the name wireless charging is kind of a misnomer because there are still wires.
It depends on how you use it.
It's not the crucial wire.
The car thing is a good one because like when it's just like a circular thing sitting on a car vent, you just put your phone on and it's like thunk. That's kind of cool. And it just kind of works. So on my nightstand, it's kind of the same thing. Anyway, iPhone 15. One of the first devices to support Qi 2. This is a good thing. I would love to know what people are thinking about this. So yeah. Have you guys seen the PlayStation Portal? Sony's latest handheld system, which doesn't play any games.
Is this the one that you have to be close to the PlayStation?
This is the one that only streams from your PlayStation 5. So to use the PlayStation Portal, you must own a PlayStation 5. You must be within an internet connection, ideally at home, but it will work remotely because Sony has created a remote play app. They've actually been doing that for a while. This thing, it costs $200. I reviewed it.
God.
I was not a fan. I'm just wondering, have you all heard of this thing? Like, what are your thoughts about a $200 device that can only stream games from your already very expensive console?
Just get a Steam Deck, just get a Steam Deck or a Nintendo Switch. It seems like Sony is trying to solve an issue without actually addressing the issue.
It's such a, we talk about like the annoyances from some of these companies. Like Google annoys me with bad user experience. Apple annoys me with how stubborn it can be at times. Sony just is like, hey, do you want speakers on your neck? No, Sony, I don't. No. Give me something I can use. Give me like standards we could use. But Anthony, Alex.
I mean, your review is the first time I'd even heard of it,
Okay.
and I enjoyed your review. It definitely convinced me not to get it. And I should say the first PlayStation device I ever owned was the PSP, and I loved it. And
PSP was great.
Not that it was a great, like it worked. I could play games anywhere, and and I should say I'm also just like a very casual gamer. Witness the fact that I didn't even know this thing existed. But for a second I lit up. I was like, oh, maybe like it's a new PlayStation portable device. And I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna get this. No thanks.
Yeah, I just don't play a lot of games. What
sort of games are you playing, Anthony?
I play on like my iPad mostly. That's how casual I am. I'm just playing like
true casual.
Listen, you could play a lot on your iPad now.
Yeah.
You could do so much. Anthony, you could stream PlayStation stuff to your iPad, PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 to your iPad instead of buying this stupid thing. So
I think I am going to reward myself with the Steam Deck this year, but now I'm just doing like
Steam Deck is the best.
Apple
Steam
Arcade.
Deck is so great. Well, especially right now, the Steam Deck OLED just hit, and we reviewed that over in Gadget 2, and I am tempted. Like I bought the original, the highest end one when it came out like 2 years ago. I'm like, oh, OLED screen, slightly better screen, and I like the Steam Deck so much that I'm tempted. But yeah, so the PlayStation Portal is half the price of the entry-level Steam Deck, which can actually play games and be useful offline. It is the same price as the Nintendo Switch Lite, which is a system you can buy to play Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Like that alone, like sells the usefulness more than the PlayStation Portal. I've heard from people who were interested in the Portal of like, if my TV is in use, like if I'm in a small apartment, I have one TV, I want to play some games, but my partner is on, watching some on the set. Like you could use this. But yeah, it's such a specific use case. It is so expensive. And also it's streaming. So all the problems of streaming, just check out my review, folks. I also did a video review of that. But yeah, if you cannot trust a device, I can't recommend it. Like ultimately, like that's it. I ran into random networking issues. I was able to use it remotely over tethering. But that's just because I was lucky enough to like get super fast 5G ultra wideband where I was actually parked. So that kind of worked out pretty well. But yeah, the Portal, kind of a dud. I like your mini review, Paris. Just get a Steam Deck or wait for the next Switch.
That's going to be my review for most gaming devices. Get a Steam Deck or a Switch.
I was fortunate that I got addicted to tower defense games, which are just not really that big of a deal on consoles. So that's all I play is tower right now. I'm thinking Kingdom Rush, I think, is the one that I play, but it's just a tower defense, and I can play it on my phone just as easily as anywhere else. But I am waiting to see what platform Bungie releases Marathon on. So as an old Marathon player, I'm like, oh, I might have to buy whatever they put Marathon on to.
I mean, Macs are becoming better gaming platforms now. You could play Lies of P on a Mac. I was playing like the wildest things. I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, and it could use my save from Steam because it's all Steam and it works fine on Macs now. So I don't know, just a wild thing.
I just want Marathon Arena, and I'm good. Like I can just play, and then I can play with that one level the whole time. Have you
seen Valve put out a documentary for the 25th anniversary of Half-Life? and it's from the NoClip folks. So it looks great. It's really cool and super informative for old school gamers. Go check that out on Valve's YouTube page. And you know what? Let's take a quick break. Let's check in with Leo for a word from our sponsor.
Hi, Devindra. You getting tired of me yet? I'm back again. Look, thank you for doing the show. I appreciate it. I do want to mention that This Week in Tech is brought to you this week by Wix Web Agencies. You're going to love this one. Let me tell you about Wix Studio, the platform that gives agencies total creative freedom to deliver complex client sites while still smashing deadlines. How? Well, first, let's talk about the advanced design capabilities. With Wix Studio, you can build unique layouts with a revolutionary grid experience. And watch, it's so cool as elements scale proportionally by default. No-code animation adds sparks of delight, while custom CSS gives total design control. But it doesn't stop there. You can bring ambitious client projects to life in any industry with a fully integrated suite of business solutions, from e-com to events to bookings and more. And extend the capabilities even further with hundreds of APIs, integrations with every kinds of software. You know what else? The workflows, they just make sense. There's the built-in AI tools, the centralized workspace, the on-canvas collaboration, the reuse of assets across sites, the seamless client handover. And that's not all. Find out more at wix.com/studio. Thank you, Wix, for supporting This Week in Tech. Now back to Devindra.
Thanks, Leo. You know, one thing you had brought up previously, Alex, that I think is worth talking about, YouTube requiring disclosures when videos are using generative AI. It seems like a useful thing. Like, it does seem like YouTube and Google are thinking more about the state of like how media is going to be made moving forward, the potential dangers of using generative AI when people aren't aware. I saw some, I think some news agencies were using AI produced images for war coverage recently. And they were completely fake and completely overblown. Like, what do you think about
I don't think any real news organizations were using AI for that.
Yeah.
There's definitely people who are posting those things. I think that
quote unquote news organizations. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we have to start being able to tell people that this is real or this isn't real, because, man, you can, at least with Midjourney, you can get to stuff that looks pretty real. You know, so it is hard for people to understand what that is. And I think that a little bit of it is you know, at the beginning, it's going to be, you know, Scout's honor kind of thing. I mean, you have to declare it. But I think that, you know, so that's going to be, I don't know how far the watermarks will get, you know, the digital watermarks that they're suggesting get put into a lot of these things. You know, I think we're at a point where, you know, that Midjourney's doing a pretty good job. I don't think that, you know, the DALL-E is not quite there yet. Like, you can usually see a DALL-E one from a mile away. Whereas Midjourney, you can build stuff that very hard to tell the difference between that and the photograph. And so understanding what those things are. And then as you start to look at some of the video stuff, when you look at Runway AI, you know, they're starting to ramp up. They're not there yet, but they're starting to, get to a point where that starts to look pretty real. And so I do think that it helps. Again, it's Scout's honor at the moment. Obviously they'll start to, you know, I have a feeling that they're going to start this, and then YouTube will come down pretty hard on people who don't declare it. You know, like, if you don't start declaring what you're doing, they're gonna penalize you pretty hard. You know, so I think that that's going to be. I don't know if they'll do that at the beginning. I think they're trying to get everybody in the corral, but they're going to tighten that calculation pretty quickly. And I do think that it helps. I think the only danger is always thinking that something is believable because there's some like seatbelts save a lot of people, but it's proven that people also drive a lot harder with seatbelts on. So there's this in between. You should wear seatbelts. I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Please wear a seatbelt.
Yeah, please wear a seatbelt.
There's a person in my neighborhood. The official podcast. Let me tell you, don't have conversations with people, folks, because I talked to somebody in my neighborhood, thought they were a normal person, and then they told me they don't believe in seatbelts, and I had to back away from that conversation.
They're just not connected to, like they're, they like to live large. But I think that, it's like there's a more head injury. And this is a good example. There's more head injuries in the NFL because they have helmets, the helmets cause you to hit each other a lot harder than you would otherwise, in a lot of different ways. And so the challenge really is that, we don't want to get into a thing where we lull, like, well, if it doesn't say that it's not If it doesn't say that it has AI in it, it must not have AI in it. We don't know, and I think that I think people have to learn to not trust. And I think this is actually still, I'll keep saying this over and over again. It's not we shouldn't have been trusting what we see as much as we see it. I have to admit that my former job, I spent a lot of time not telling lies, but not necessarily, framing things. so it was like that was my job. Like, so for instance, you show up at an event and it's supposed to be a protest and only 20 people show up. You raise the camera and you point down, and now, like you raise the camera and you change that angle. I'm not lying, but I'm not telling the whole truth either. I'm not, it's not the whole truth of, there was almost nobody here. That doesn't make any good news coverage. And so the thing is that you see those kind of manipulations all the time. So we shouldn't have been as trusting of the press as we have been. We should always be looking for multiple points of view, and those points of view should not agree with each other. So I want to see, if I see something that I see that it makes me really upset, if I'm watching MSNBC, I should know what Fox says about it. I should know what other things say, so that I can start to measure those things. And I think that with AI, we have to learn to not take that single point of view and as what is the truth. I mean, we shouldn't be gathering the truth slowly.
I'm already dreading entering another election year with fully powered AI stuff happening. Like, I don't know. Alex, from your experience, I know Midjourney and Dolly are doing well with image generation now, but is anything doing like actually good realistic video generation?
Runway is probably the furthest along. Runway.ai is probably the furthest along as far as I guess I would say as a publicly available. There's some stuff that people are working on that, some models that are a little bit more that are not part of Runway AI. But I think Runway, the stuff that I've seen that has been the most impressive has been from Runway. So that's probably the furthest one along.
And actually in the vein of, I guess questioning what you're seeing, there was a big story that popped up over the last week about people on TikTok reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America and basically saying, like, oh, man, my world has changed.
Real good points.
He's got some good points. And TikTok said it would start removing those videos. And there was a lot of there's definitely a lot of hand wringing about people saying, oh, my God, I cannot believe TikTok is promoting this. From what I see, the aftermath, as described by Ryan Broderick over at the Garbage Day newsletter, which is great, and you should subscribe to it, is that it was not really a trend. It was a small amount of videos that were making this point. It didn't seem like they were being overly promoted or anything, and it wasn't like an actual viral trend. It was a couple people basically doing this, and it didn't seem like it made much of a difference. But I remember that initial wave of reaction to this. Like, I cannot believe what the youth are doing on TikTok. They're agreeing with Osama bin Laden. That's insane. Any thoughts on like this whole media like response to it and the actual aftermath?
There's a lot of crazy people out there saying a lot of crazy things.
Oh yes,
some of them are on broadcast.
Too many people can broadcast their thoughts right now. Yes, I always look back on. I was in 2000 before all of this stuff hit. I was doing training in Zimbabwe. I was doing media training in Zimbabwe. I was partnered with a school there, and I happened to set up my trip during the 2000 elections, which is where everything kind of shifted in Zimbabwe. So I happened to be on the ground when the elections were happening, and what I saw being reported by CNN, being reported by all these, was so different. I was in downtown Harare watching them report on it. And I have to say that is what broke me in my belief in news. It was like, that's why I have to see this in a bunch of different places before I'm going to believe any of this stuff, and the thing is that we have to understand that our media has been manipulated for a very long time, like forever, and so the thing is that we have to understand that, when we see these kinds of things, that this is no new tale to tell, and so I take everything with a grain of salt. I take everything I look at and I go, and I get upset and my blood goes up. I go, I'm going to have to look at this in a couple different directions. I have to see what other people are saying about this and how this is going. And I know that not everybody does that, but if you're not doing that, you don't know what's going on, and from then because of my job, because of what I did for a decade, I was often in
the room where those things happened. And and the thing is that I could, what was being reported on set. Like I pulled a 15 during the Obama Romney debate. I had finished a bunch of work that I had been doing in that building, and I was leaving, and the door was open to the debate. Debate was live when I was leaving because all my stuff was done before then. And this is the first time I think I've ever said this in public. What happened? So I'm coming out of the building. We had been doing a bunch of Google Hangouts and stuff like that, and so I've been coming out of the building, and there was these, you see these cable runs, right? These the trays that have all the cables in them. And there was one that was stainless steel. And I had never seen one like that. And I never thought about how much noise it will make when I go over it with a 1510 case. And so I went over it, and it just made this boom, like this really loud bang. And what happened was the Secret Service person was sitting right there, and he just goes, "It's nothing." Like, he just, that was the end of it for because he was standing at the open door. But you got to get, Romney, I think it was Romney, was like 15 feet from that door inside of the thing when this loud bang happened. He saw it. Secret Service saw it, wasn't worried about me when I came up. That all happened. And that made a news round. Like it was like back then, if you did a search, and even now you probably could find a couple of things about loud bang. If you do a search for loud bang at Romney, Obama, whatever, there was all of these conspiracy theories that someone got shot, and there was all this stuff and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I at the time I was like, I am not going to tell people. I can't do that because I wasn't.
It was you.
Anything. It was
all
me.
along.
But it was another one of those things that definitely affected my view of the news, because it made a news cycle. I mean, that night it was like on Fox, and it was on all these other things, and there was all and it was just like it was a 1510 going over a little cable ramp. And so it's one of those things that we just have to understand when we look at all of these things, that we have to be very careful about what we believe, and I'm not nihilistic, or nihilistic or whatever. I'm not saying you shouldn't believe anything. I'm just saying you have to be very careful and triangulate the solution, because it's never what it seems.
Yeah. I think part of it too, people have to understand, is like reporting, especially if you're reporting on something that's happening in the moment, like it is it's like a growing experience, right? Like it is, you don't always have perfect information. So a lot of people are reporting what they know, and what they know just may not be correct. And that's often what we're seeing. I mean, we saw several examples of this as conflict was brewing between Israel and Palestine. Like we saw this in the Ukraine war as well. So it's hard to trust anything, I guess, at this point. And so meanwhile, as we're in this wonderful headspace, Meta has announced it's allowing ads claiming that the 2020 election was rigged on Facebook and Instagram. So really helping the whole situation out here when it comes to fake news.
Although I love the caveat that they still won't allow ads that are contesting current elections. It's just the past elections that you're allowed to say were rigged.
Specifically, the past election, you're allowed to pay Meta to amplify a post that you have saying that the past election was rigged. I think is an interesting.
They won't not take that money, you see.
Yeah, they won't. They'll definitely pocket it and let you, let you boost that post.
Yeah, I think that it's complicated. The First Amendment in the United States gets complicated about what you can and can't say about those things. And, I think that we get upset about it. But I think that the other thing that we have to look at is that, again, which lies are the ones that we should post and which ones we shouldn't. And saying that you absolutely can't say these things is not something that generally you can do in the
I'm not saying, I think that that's a valid point. Yeah, but it's not a case of it's not a First Amendment concern whether or not you can pay a company to have specific speech and advertising. That's a business transaction with a private company, which is well within their rights to, make any sort of rules as to what they want to do and what you can't. Like you can't, advertise off-market drugs on Facebook, but you could probably post about them.
Yeah. As someone who worked pretty closely on the 2020 election, it's not as clear cut as it would seem. I'm not saying that no one broke the law, but I will say that I was pretty close to where it happened. So it's not as, I will tell you that it's not, it's not as clear cut as people make it out.
It's a weird topic to just deal with right now. We are almost 4 years off of that thing, and I live in Georgia. So there has been a lot of focus here in terms of what's been happening when it comes to election integrity. And
I don't think anything illegal happened.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that anything illegal happened. I think it's a complicated puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know,
I think one of the things I've like swung back and forth on too is like feeling sometimes like there are these kind of moral panics around, and this, you know, goes back also to the TikTok thing, these sort of moral panics around things that are on social media, as if, you know, and they kind of treat something bad being posted on Facebook or on TikTok as being the source of all of our problems. And I think that's obviously not the place. I think they can amplify them. And, you know, and certainly in this case, I'm not crazy about this Facebook policy, but I do think like and again, this is one that I feel genuinely torn about, because I think sometimes in the past I was probably too sanguine about like the kind of stuff that would get posted, but I feel like I'm swinging back and forth a little bit on this, where I am like, you know, Facebook is never going to save us, right? You know, like it like the fact that like we have such awful discourse kind of around the election, about the legitimacy of the election, I think is something that happens on Facebook, but is not something that Facebook is responsible for. And the problems are sort of bigger. And I wish they had a different policy, but I also think that like sometimes we focus on the tech companies because they sort of make for easy villains in this. I mean, they
are the platforms, right? So it's like, well, who else am I going to complain about in terms of allowing this? So yeah.
I mean, again, I think but it's also like a tool, you know? I mean, technology is the same. Like it is like complaining. It's about like, you know, hundreds of years ago, complaining because people were using the printing press to spread misinformation. Right. The printing press isn't the actor of evil. It is the person who printed the pamphlet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and again, I think that educating people in general about what the issues are and making sure that they are, you know, I think we have to keep on working on that and making sure that people are looking at things through a critical filter. I think that the real danger we have is that people start to, whether it's conservative or liberal or whatever it is, that we have to be careful and we have to constantly tell people to question what they're looking at. You know, it's really important to question what they're looking at and use multiple sources of information to make decisions and not take anything. You know, when we looked at this, I don't know, I'm sure that all of us on the show read many of those articles and then other articles and then talked to other people that are connected and did all that's what I know for the last, you know, I was really nervous about the first part of the show. And so I talked to people that are pretty close to a lot of those things. I read every article I could find. I've been reading them for, you know, watching this whole thing. And that you start to see a picture that may or may not be true, but it gets clearer as you start to look at it. Whereas if you read one of those articles, you're not going to know, you know. And I think that it's important that we build a more critical viewership, as opposed to not believing that any of it is absolute truth, because it's not even oftentimes done on purpose. People are just wrong. Like they have a wrong opinion about it, and they're not doing anything to try to drive people that direction. They're just not. They don't have all the data.
Well, you know what? Speaking about platforms that I think are maybe doing not so great when it comes to like dealing with hate speech. We've seen news about several companies announcing that they're pulling advertising from X, following you know, a rise in anti-Semitic posts, but specifically Elon Musk essentially supporting supporting an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So we see Apple, IBM, that's a funny one. We could talk about that later. And other companies kind of pulling their advertising because of this. So this is Elon's Twitter. This is yet another story in Elon's Twitter. Any thoughts on this? I feel like,
I feel like first we should give some context, which is that this is all in response to, on Wednesday, Elon Musk responded to a tweet that said, it kind of claimed that Jewish communities support, quote, dialectical hatred against whites, end quote. And Musk responded, "You've said the actual truth," to that post, which is kind of what kicked all of this off.
Yes. Which is that is basically approving replacement. Was it replacement?
The Great Replacement Theory.
The Great Replacement Theory. Like that's the conspiracy that minorities are trying to push out white people, unfortunately. But he basically proved that. So yeah, that seemed bad. That didn't seem very useful.
I'm kind of amazed at the number of self-inflicted wounds he's capable of as someone who, like there's got to be people at Twitter just like, just stop talking. Like just
Stop talking.
All you have to do is not do anything, and Twitter would probably do well, but it is really concerning that he's, and again, this is his platform and he bought it and he owns it and all those things. But I think that it's concerning for the platform to have someone who, again, that undermines that process because it's just
it's right now it's a microphone into who he actually is. So that is the unfortunate thing. Like if Elon Musk had just shut up, and certainly if he shut up but also didn't buy Twitter, his legacy, if he froze it, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, certainly would be in a much better place. But it's I don't know.
Although a funny thing to remember is also that he tried to not buy Twitter. That in fact the board forced him to buy Twitter.
The board forced him to because it was I don't know if the full story.
His contract, forced him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
the board was never...
and I think they had financial reasons to do that. But it is funny to me that like there was this very upside down situation where I was like, well, this seems like this is obviously going to go badly, and yet he's essentially being pushed into this thing that will be terrible for everyone.
Truly, the definition of effing around and finding out, basically. Like he is finding out quite a bit right now.
Well, it was just the bottom line was the board was never going to get a price like that again, and Twitter's survival was probably in question at the time that he did it, and so. From a fiduciary duty to the investor.
Sure. Sell to the troll. Sell. Yes.
Well, to a fiduciary duty to the investors, the board did the right thing in making
for sure.
Return. There any kind of duty that they had, which they don't in that board, and this is the difference between OpenAI and but they didn't have a responsibility to the users, which they just threw to the wolves, and so the by in the wolves in this case being Elon Musk, and so I think that is it's a pretty complicated thing that he has a hold of and a big stick there, but he would be okay. Like a lot of the stuff he's doing is not necessarily wrong. Like the idea of, forcing people to pay for something means they have to give their credit card, which means that they're a person. So you're doing a hard ID against people. It's very hard to build a bot network if you have to give a credit card for every person. So I get the model there because it's not making any money. I mean, it's not going to make any money. It's there to do hard IDs. And so the thing is that so I get what he's doing there. But everything else is so ham-fisted. You're just like, it's just difficult.
I've also read a lot of commentary that a lot of botnets and spam nets have access to lots of credit cards. So like even just having the payment details is not enough to like confirm an identity.
It's a lot of them. I mean,
and if you're talking about the people who would be incentivized to use a credit card to sign up en masse and pay like $1, someone who's running a botnet and is getting some sort of financial gain out of it, that dollar per account is going to be worth it to them more so than, some random Joe Schmo who's thinking of checking out this platform x.com or whatever.
Yeah, I the thing is that it just gives you a hard pin in the ground. Like a lot of it makes it much easier for you to identify patterns and so on and so forth if people have to give you a credit card.
Absolutely.
And the thing. And yeah, so it definitely is. I agree with you, and I think that is, it gives them a lot more access to that. YouTube was kind of going down the right path in 2013, I think, when they were going to real names, and people just lost their minds over YouTube possibly doing real names. But now YouTube still cannot get control of their comments. Like it is just, and the way to do that is to get hard IDs, and people don't want to do that because they want to say whatever they want to say. But the way to tame that is to get hard IDs, so that's I've built social networks for a couple of decades. And the first thing we do is everybody's got to use real names. Like I'll just kick, like in our Discord for office hours, which is what we do here. It's all real names, and we won't let you talk until you put your real name in. That's the, like, and you can't post anything until you put a real name in. That's it calms everything really quickly.
One thing I just want to point out, it is certainly interesting to see IBM among the companies pulling ads here because I don't know. There's history about IBM and the Holocaust and the business they did supporting the Holocaust. That
would give them
not really talked about.
That'd be the reason for them to do it first.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't want to be
right.
Nobody talk about us selling database technology to Hitler, please.
In the same way that Germany has some of like the most kind of stringent kind of laws against anything that might seem anti-Semitic speech.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of like, all right, well, we up. So, well, I also love that. NBC Universal, which is the former company of Linda Yaccarino, who's now the CEO, also pulled their advertising. So everybody's kind of like
all her friends abandoned her.
Yeah, and Forbes reported earlier today that in addition to all these companies pausing spending money advertising on X, a bunch of different top advertising executives have made personal pleas to CEO Linda Yaccarino saying like, hey, you should resign. This is getting to the point where this is going to deeply damage your credibility, and it might be the only way to get through to Elon. You should step down.
Yeah, it's ugly. Like, and again, I think that he probably has a convoluted belief system that has that all. It's probably much less problematic in his head in the way he thinks of it than we think it is. But it still looks really bad, and it really sounds.
I don't
bad.
think we need to be in the position
really
of trying to defend anti-Semitic statements.
No. No. I'm just saying that he's got some kind of convoluted thing that's in there, and he should just process that a little bit longer before I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it is like not speakable. Like what he's talking about is not okay.
Not okay, but also like
okay. Like not this is.
But I think the flip side is that it's also like it's not surprising to me at all that he said it. Like this is like entirely consistent with what he's been tweeting for the last few years.
Yeah.
Silence. Like we're just like I don't know.
It is
the richest man in the world owns Twitter, and this is what he chooses to say.
But I do want to say that like if we wanted Twitter to have some social meaning or social power, we should blame the board to some degree because
absolutely.
They did tie him into this. Like, he wanted out, and if they were doing the right thing for the world, they would have let him out of that deal. What they did the right thing for the investors, for the stakeholders. They did the right thing for them, which is their duty. But to do the right thing, in my opinion, would have been to let him out of that deal and walk away and find another solution. And I think that they didn't do the right thing.
Okay, but to tie all this back in kind of a roundabout way, this is still kind of a twisted version of the setup we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where the board of directors in this case has a fiduciary obligation to do the right thing for their bottom line. But, let's say if Twitter had some sort of strange nonprofit board where their whole prerogative is to do the right thing for the world, it might have been a different situation. I can see how the problem they would have had most likely is they probably would have been, if they had let him off the hook, they probably would have been sued by the investors saying, hey, absolutely.
This was our buyout and everything else. I do think that maybe not different than OpenAI, but I think Twitter had reached some point where it almost became a public utility for a lot of folks. And there could be an argument that allowing a person to take it private and do whatever they want with it, may have a larger impact on the world than what we do. So
may mean bad things.
Private.
Yeah. Bad things for humanity, unfortunately.
But it is also a reminder that, yes, if for some reason OpenAI came up with a different governance structure that seems more similar to what we expect from a for-profit company, that might be better for the company in the short term, but actually may not be a great thing in the long term.
Any traditional capitalist structure is not great for us in the long term, unfortunately. Like, that's unfortunately it. And speaking of that, let's tune to Leo for a word from our sponsors.
Okay, this is the last time, I promise, Devendra. Until next week. This episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Traceroute. If you've been listening, you've heard us tell you about the new season of Traceroute. They kick it off by exploring a topic we are all deeply interested in, which is the ongoing and challenging relationship between humanity and artificial intelligence. Is AI our friend or our worst enemy? I'm pretty much not sure, which is why I was really interested to listen to season 3 of Traceroute. You can get it on your favorite podcast listening platform. It really helped me at least crystallize in my mind what AI is good for, what it ain't good for, and what the threats from AI are. Traceroute. It's a podcast about the people. That's important. The people who shape our digital world. Every story peels back the layers of the stack to reveal the humanity in the hardware. Season 3 has just begun. They just started at the beginning of the month. First 2 shows about AI, but they're going to explore topics that can shape our society in profound ways. The intersection of, for instance, tech and conservation, and how researchers are using machine learning and robotics to debug an invasive species to offer unique solutions to ecological crises. I haven't heard that one yet. I can't wait. And digital migration for the preservation of history, culture, and land, and a whole lot more. Get keyed in to the conversation right now. Listen and subscribe to the new season of Traceroute. You'll find it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Right next to us. Check out Traceroute right now. We thank them so much for supporting This Week in Tech. And thank you, Devindra and company, for filling in for me while I'm gone. Alex Lindsay, Scott Stein. We appreciate it. And I will be back in a couple of weeks. Take care.
And here's a little recap of what happened on Twit this week.
Please welcome to the live stage here, Mr. Renee Ritchie, Mac Break Weekly host, YouTube creator, friend of Micah Sargent, friend of Georgia Dow, now at YouTube.
I got to keep the cat videos flowing or people get upset. So the cat videos got to flow.
Previously on Twit. Windows Weekly.
I think I can tell from our hosts, Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott, that they are at Microsoft Ignite in Seattle. Hello, gentlemen.
Now, how many shots did we take when Jared was saying Copilot over and over and over again?
If we had taken shots every time they said Copilot, we would both be dead.
Yeah.
Tech News Weekly.
A really big, literally breaking news right before the show story about Apple supporting RCS sometime next year. Will Saddleberg from Android Police talks all about that.
And there goes a pig flying through the sky.
Exactly. This Week in Google.
So how much influence does a Twitter troll farm have?
Like my personal index here is that, Elon Musk tweeted something nasty about me, very soon after he bought it about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I got all these death threats. And he just did it again this last week and nothing. So
That's telling.
Twit.
Alex death threat index is way down versus where it was. Yeah.
So many shows I have to catch up on. It seems like, so many fun times. One thing I want to talk about, folks, there are some fun stories for the end of the show. But there was news, an internal memo. Amazon plans to cut several hundred Alexa jobs as it ends unspecified initiatives, according to GeekWire. Basically, it sounds like a lot of Alexa people who are working on Alexa are leaving, and the company's plans to be refocusing its efforts on generative AI and maybe repositioning Alexa. I don't think any of this is too surprising, given like the shift we've seen in AI this year and how Alexa is not quite built to do that. But do you all have any thoughts about this and thoughts about are you Alexa users?
I mean, this isn't particularly surprising. I could be misremembering the number, but I believe the Amazon's devices team, before all these layoffs, was one of the largest teams in the company as far as corporate goes. 8,000 is the number that's coming to my mind. Like probably somewhere close to 10 people working on devices and Alexa AI, which has always really surprised me because, I mean, even internal Amazon studies showed that most people, once they get an Alexa, their usage of it drops off within the first year significantly. I mean, people use the Alexa just for like, what's the weather, set a timer, play
Which
some
is
music.
useful, but that's all.
Which is useful, but it's not what
Yeah.
they originally thought were going to, I don't know. If you have an Alexa, I have one. I'm sorry also for anybody listening to this with a speaker on and we're pinging
That's
the
true.
device.
That's true. We
It's
should be
really
saying
awful.
Amazon Assistant.
We should say like Amazon Echo or something like that.
Okay.
But whenever I talk to my Echo, it always is trying to upsell me on something. It's trying to get me to tip my driver, trying to get me to do some package thing. They're always trying to juice those numbers, and it's just
They've been
not
shitified it quite a bit
They
in terms
really
of like
have,
reminders and so many things, because there are things like when that stuff first came out, like certainly I think it was the first like virtual assistant that I think was actually useful, right? Because Amazon had fully built around audio and around speech recognition and just like doing simple commands. So they were doing a better job than Google Assistant at the time and Siri at the time for sure. And I have one in almost every room in my house. Now that I think about it, like I use it enough where it's in my bedroom for setting alarms. I have the like little cute nightlight one, or it has the LED clock in front of it. So it looks very cute. They're good for music.
How many, you have different Alexa in all of your rooms?
I have the Echo Studio in my kitchen, which is the big boy speaker, which sounds really, really good. Mm-hmm. I have a Sonos Move in my living room, which has a integration. I've got the Echo Dot in my bedroom with that nice little LED, clock. So they serve different purposes, but also there are things you could add. There are skills you could add. So with my first kid, we learned that there was an app we used for tracking things like diapers and feedings and stuff. So we could just say like, Alexa, log a wet diaper. And that changed my life because like you would have to do that dozens of times a day versus going into the app and like tracking it and everything. And that was helpful to know if the kid was sick or if like something was changing. So for me, that was a really good functional thing. Also, if you have smartphone stuff, Alexa integration is really good with that. So, those sorts of things I think are useful. Anthony, Alex, any thoughts about like where Alexa is going?
As a person that's named is Alex, I do not use an Alexa in my house because
you could change the name. You could change it to Computer.
I know I should have changed it to another one, but I was just kind of like it was so many misfires that I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna it was too much to figure out, and I just went back to Siri. Because
my son's name is Alexander, and that's not been a problem yet. So we shall see. We have not.
For me, it was firing off, and I know that I think I just didn't know exactly how to fix it. All I knew is that it was firing off all the time, and I just I was like, oh, okay. And I had a show. I used a show. Which my parents still love. They use it all the time. But yeah, it was.
When those things work, it is kind of magic, especially the show devices. Anthony, any thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm worried. I'm just giving people the impression that I'm a Luddite, which maybe I secretly am.
We are looking at Anthony's room, and all I see are books.
Ugh, gross.
But all I have is a Google Home Mini in the kitchen, which I only got because it was free to Spotify subscribers for a while. And then at a certain point I turned the microphone off because I was just like, the value I get from this
you just want to play
so
music,
low. And relative to the thought of Google having a bunch of recordings of my voice, I'd rather just turn the microphone off and control it from my phone. But I mean, I think that I understand that a lot of people don't feel that way. That's fine.
Well, right now they're fun little tools, but I can certainly imagine the thing missing from Alexa and Siri and everything is it could tell you the weather, right? It could give you very basic information. It can't really fetch complex information. You can't really have a conversation with it. So from what we've seen from all of these, not generative AI, but large language model things like ChatGPT, when you can talk to something and it's actually fetching information and can hold a conversation, then that really just changes the game. So I would, if I were Amazon, I'd be fully putting pedal to the metal to make sure Alexa is the best when it comes to generative or not generative, but AI driven, virtual assistant stuff. But I feel like everybody's probably thinking that now too, right? We already know that's going to be a big deal in Google Assistant soon. I feel like Apple is the only one where it's we don't really know what's going to happen with Siri at some point.
I think it's still the problem is that the number one use. I have an Apple, one of the Apple speakers, the original one, the big speaker that they have, and that sits in our kitchen. And the number one use for it is to either play music or to do timers. So
timers are great.
Timers are the thing. You call my wife is using it constantly for timers, and other than that, it's getting to play music. And I think that it is a function that it's not very good. Other than it used to be. I think that they've dumbed it down because I think they turned the attitude level down a little bit. But asking the Apple products to close the pod bay doors was always fun. So there used to be 8 or 10 responses to closing the pod bay doors that was great. And so there's a couple little hidden things like that were in there. But outside
maybe we shouldn't poke fun at evil AI because we're getting too close to it. I don't know. Maybe even they were getting afraid. Any other thoughts on the Alexa team or what?
I have one dumb thought, which is my the one recommendation I have that is actually a good thing in an Amazon Assistant product is you can tell your device to make cat noises. And it's a scale that will just make cat noises. And if you own a cat, it will really freak them out. And it's quite fun.
I have 3 cats and my wife turned that on. So I'm always hearing Alexa will meow before doing things. We live in the cat house. It is just wild. I'm very glad that this next story dropped because we have Alex Lindsay on the show, and I am somebody who have been waiting patiently for The Abyss to get a beautiful re-release. James Cameron's The Abyss has been a movie that's been really hard to watch for a very long time, and that's actually been true for a bunch of his movies. I think True Lies, it was hard too. I think eventually True Lies was on Hulu. I think The Abyss was even on HBO for some time, but the quality wasn't great. The print wasn't great. I love this movie. The last time I saw The Abyss was like at a Nighthawk theater, the Williamsburg Nighthawk, on a ratty print that was clearly from the 90s, and it's like so dirty, so speckled, but still such a beautiful film. The news is out that Cameron's 4K restoration of The Abyss is happening. Well, he already screened it, but it has a Blu-ray release date, and on December 6th, it's going to be screened in theaters. I feel like just one day. Let me see here. On March 12th, 2024, it's going to hit disc, so 4K Blu-rays, and also that's along with True Lies. So True Lies is getting collector's edition then too. My question is, what the hell? What took so long? Like, what is? James Cameron's at the bottom of the ocean. He's making Avatar movies, but come on.
So James Cameron, I mean, the level of control personality that James Cameron has is epic. You know, like I know a lot of folks that worked with James Cameron. I've been in the other room when something didn't go well. I've been on the other side of a wall, James Cameron, when something in the visual effects was not going well. And it was like, I'm surprised things weren't shaking in my room. He was yelling so much, you know, like it was, so his upset is kind of epic. So the thing is that he's not going to want to do it unless he has the time to sit down and go through every single shot and make every little bit make it just perfect for what he wants to do. And he's busy. Like, he does a lot of things. he's in a lot of places. And so, and I'm sure, I think, it's one of those things that he'll get around to it when he gets around to it. I think that he also tends to be very future oriented, like he's looking to the next thing he's working on. The old stuff doesn't matter to him that much. A lot of people who are of action don't really look back and go until they retire or stop.
Sure.
They don't have to, like, they're like, okay, well, this will take me weeks to go through all of this.
And he's never going to stop. He's always moving forward with something.
Got all these Avatar movies, and he's always got a bunch of things on his plate, and then he's diving, and then he's doing these other things. And so you have to understand that, like, he's just not that interested, in the older stuff.
Oh, I understand. I have felt the pain. Yeah.
So he's just not, a lot of people like that are just not that interested in going back until they're done with everything, because then they really have to, because here's the problem is he doesn't want to just he's not the kind of guy that's going to hand it to the studio, just let them do whatever they're going to do. He's going to want to look at every frame, make sure that it is what he wants. And there are some challenges. So a lot of films, for instance, when they're done when you watch them at a lower resolution, they all look great, and when you watch them in the movie theater, they looked great. Now, the reason they looked great when you watched them in the movie theater is because you were watching the 5th generation. So they made a copy of the original print, and then they make a copy of that, and then a copy, like, to get to 3,000 prints, you have to make copies of these, and you have to copy them out so that you have a bunch of sources. And so it could be anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th generation. As that happens, it starts to soften. And you can get away. And the reason that's important is you can get away with a lot of things. Like, I don't know what The Abyss is like, but I can tell you when they put out the HD version of The Patriot, with Gibson, half of the shots are out of focus. Well, you didn't notice that in the theater, but when you watch the pristine version of them, they are all out of focus. And and so they're just a little off. Whoever is doing the focus pulling there did not do well. And you don't notice it when you watch it in the film, but you will notice it when you watch it on your, 4K, screen. And so, when you're rescanning it at that resolution. Also, the visual effects were very, very new. A little trivia for you. The water sleuth, the very first shot of the water sleuth coming out, that is the first truly CG shot. Like I'm sorry, it's not the first CG shot. It's the first computer composited shot ever. So that one was there, and they actually had to. I talked to John Knoll about it, and he was like, they didn't have enough RAM in the Pixar machine to render both. They couldn't render the whole frame at one time. So they had to render the alpha channel and the one frame, and then the other half, and then they had to put it all back. They had to comp it back together. Anyway, so that water sleuth is, so there's a lot of idiosyncrasies with that render that they have to look at very carefully to make sure that, and to go through there and make sure that they tidy it up a little bit sometimes. A lot of times that, if you look at the original Star Wars, there's all the mats around what they shot for the control rigs were all there for a long time. And so anyway, so these are all the things that, and again, a director like Cameron may be tempted to go back and not only, and I don't know if he did this or not, go back and clean some of that up. Let's pay ILM, $4 or $5, $10, $15 million to go back and just tune everything up a little bit so that so the things that we couldn't do in the early 90s are stuff that we can do now. And if you're going to put it out, if you're going to do it once, I'm sure in the back of his head was, I got to redo it and I got to make all these little things that I knew were wrong right. George went a little overboard by adding new shots and people and characters and everything else. But I think Cameron is probably more of I want to just tune everything a little bit to make it work, to make it hold up at 4K and not in a theater when you're eating popcorn at a low resolution underlit, because that's really what we saw it when we saw it in the theater. Probably half lit. It's a half lit theater, which means that the bulb that they were using for the projector was probably half the power at half power. It saves them money. And so it was probably half lit. It was the 5th generation. If you're watching an average theater, and you were watching it and you didn't think about these things anymore. You had never seen HD before, so you weren't paying attention to little details. And so all of those things are the things that, and I don't think I bet you he didn't change anything other than just tuning. I don't think he added characters, but I can see how he might want to get rid of a little matte line.
There's probably things he wants to clean up. But there's a quote from him, from James Cameron to Variety in 2016 saying, he said they did a wet gates 4K scan of the original negative. Can you explain it? Do you have a sense of what that is? I hear that is like the cleanest way to get a negative scan.
Yeah, and I'm not a scanning expert, so I would love to make something up right now, but I'm not going to.
It's all good.
I don't know what
it sounded. That sounded cool. When James Cameron says, really "I've done a wet gate scan," I was like, "Yes, give it to me now."
I saw that go by, and I was like, I should research it, but we've been talking so much that I didn't get.
It's all good. But yeah, it sounds like we're gonna have a clean scan of that movie, and that's a great movie.
I actually like The Abyss a lot. I actually really like True Lies.
True Lies is a good movie that there will be a lot of conversations about what's in that movie, because unfortunately that is when the politics, but also it's very racist and just casually sexist, but it's the 90s.
That's what I meant by the politics. Yeah.
By everything.
There's so many quotes that we have from that, from that we use, like batteries, like the batteries thing. Every time we run out of batteries, it came up for us. So anyway, so it was but it's a fun ride. You're right that a lot of things in the 90s and 80s and pretty much everything before the last 10 years is probably needs an edit pass.
That's why there's content warnings about everything now in front of Disney, even including I guess old episodes of Sesame Street on Max. So
you should watch Johnny. I got excited. I grew up loving Johnny Quest. I just love. I literally imagine when I grow up, I'm just going to live and we're going to travel around the world. I'm going to do all those. I just was like,
you did kind of do some of those things. Yeah.
So then I bought all the Johnny Quest stuff. And and when I started watching it, I was like, oh, wow.
Oh,
that is so inappropriate. Like there's so much of Johnny Quest that's so inappropriate. I loved it so much.
I mean, listen, every globe-trotting hero, Tintin, all guilty of it. It's all, it's all like a colonialist propaganda, basically. But it's fun. Have you seen? I feel like if you love Johnny Quest so much, Alex, have you ever seen the Venture Brothers?
No.
Oh boy! If you ever have time, it was a long-running show, basically started in the early 2000s, and somehow just kept going on Cartoon Network. And the creators were just left alone to do whatever they wanted. It could be years before another season hit, but it's sort of like a modern reimagining of a Johnny Quest-esque family. In fact, there is a character who's basically Johnny Quest that pops up, and Johnny Quest as an adult, as a drug addicted person who never formed a personality. So it's very much irreverent, very much
Venture Brothers,
very silly. But Venture
Brothers. What is Johnny Quest about?
His name is Johnny, and he goes on quests.
Now lost a whole hour.
Okay,
anyway,
all right.
Johnny Quest has his dad as a scientist, and then he's got a person who tends to him. Rick Rick Bannon, I think.
Rick Bannon. Yeah.
So, and then he's got Haji, who is his best friend that travels with him, and he's got a little dog, and they have a jet plane, and they go around. Usually, they're going around doing something else, and then something bad happens, and then they solve it. But there was one. My favorite one growing up was The Mummy, and there was like they're in Egypt, they're having a good time, and then a mummy escapes, and then they have to deal with the mummy, and it turns out that the mummy is all part of. There's always like a bigger conspiracy connection.
It's like a Scooby-Doo kind of mystery thing at times, yeah.
Except with and it's they've got lots of gadgets, and he's a smart kid, and he and Haji always they're the ones that solve it, for the most part, and so anyway, so that's the it's kind of a kids do that thing. And as growing up, as I said, it was my favorite. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon. It was like my favorite.
It was a fun show, like a really cool concept. I think you would get a lot out of the Venture Brothers, Alex, because it's also genuinely funny. Like it's a comedy show, but it's also like playing on the ideas of both Johnny Quest and also old school other Hanna-Barbera stuff too. So it's really funny, especially if you know the source.
So many Hanna-Barberas. Like it was like that was like in my time. I'm dating myself, but in the 80s, coming home from school, Hanna-Barbera was all.
That's it. And Venture Brothers is a show basically made by people who have the same like things too. It's a lot of fun. Also, like pop culture wise, there's one thing I wanted to talk about. There was this story about Asus. Asus ran some special edition motherboards for Neon Genesis Evangelion, and they misspelled it. They misspelled the mother. It's a $700 motherboard, and
oh my god!
It's they wrote Evangelion.
Good enough, I guess.
You had one job.
I feel like they're even more collector item now, though. Like that makes them seem more special rather than less.
That's actually the plan. That was the plan all along, to really increase the value of this collector's edition. But yeah, Asus issued a statement saying that they will. Let me see here. They apologize, of course, and I believe they're going to be fixing it. They'll provide a corrected decorative part that end users can use to replace the misprinted part. If you encounter this issue, please contact your customer service provider.
As Anthony said, collectors are not going to do anything to it. They're going to keep it. They're
going to keep it. Well, request the part. Request the part too, but also that's fun. And again, if any of you have not seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, like that is another masterpiece of a show. I believe it's on Netflix right now, and something that probably influenced me way too much when I was a teenager. And actually, while we are in the sphere of stuff, I wanted to take a page from one of my favorite podcasts, the Pop Culture Happy Hour. I just want to know, as we round out this episode, what is making you all happy this week? What pop culture thing, any particular thing in your life that's just bringing you a little joy, because things are pretty bad right now?
Nighthawk Cinema, since you mentioned it.
I love Nighthawk.
Earlier, I went there. They sometimes have these themed movie series going on, and they've been doing Nick Cage nights on Monday nights. And I went to Mondays, which was a showing of the movie Face Off, which is just an incredible film. It really brought me a
perfect 90s movie.
Yes. A perfect 90s movie, and a perfect 90s movie to see in a crowded theater of people just hooting and hollering every time they said something. In case you're not aware, the basic premise of the movie is that Nick Cage and John Travolta are in kind of a cat and mouse game. One is an FBI agent, other is a terrorist. Through strange science, they end up switching faces. And every time in the movie, someone said something like, "I've got to take his face off." Everyone in the theater would get up and clap and hoot and holler every time they said the
Those
name
are
of
the best
movie.
screenings.
Great.
That's a great movie, because there are things about Face Off that don't quite work, but also I think it is such a great example of like pure maximalist 90s action filmmaking. Just like explosions are so good. The shootouts are so much fun. Like it is like if John Waters was a straight man. It is that level of camp. It is definitely, it's like leading into camp too. John Travolta saying, "What a predicament."
Yeah.
Lives in my head forever.
So good.
Did you, Paris, they did a couple of years ago, they did what was it, like a play retelling of Face Off in Roman times as sort of a play in Prospect Park. This is a truly Brooklyn thing, where it was basically right outside my door, but there's a beautiful building in South Prospect Park, and they just staged this thing set in Roman times. It was basically Face Off retold there. I don't think it actually went anywhere. I think it was called Cage in the Park, and that was fun. It was one
That's
of those fun things.
fantastic. I should have. Dang, missing out. Yeah.
Things like this make me miss New York. So, Paris, Anthony. I mean, Anthony, you know how much I miss New York. So,
yeah. I considered going to that screening, and now I'm kicking myself for not going.
It was a hoot.
That could totally be it. Well, Anthony, Alex, anything you want to shout out that is bringing some joy to your lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was amazed. My daughter had her first concert. I talked about that a little earlier. Her first concert this week, and she learned how to play the drums in like 2 months. Like play them well enough to be that she was probably the strongest person on stage. Playing them, but it was the process of learning it that I was so amazed by. Is in addition to practicing 3 hours a day, she to learn it, we got a electronic drum set. This is like a Roland VX something or other electronic drum set for her, where she can play she just hears the drums. All we hear is tapping, because I was like, there's no way.
It's still very loud tapping. Like I've experienced those machines, but
the house, like
it's not like a drum set. Yeah.
No, it's definitely not like a drum set, and so she's playing, and you can hear just the tapping going on, and you know that she's doing it. She can hear all that stuff. But what we did is we took there's a program on the iPhone called Moises. And so it separates all of the song that she was doing, Just Like Heaven from The Cure, and so one of the songs anyway. And so it separates those all out into the bass and the guitar and the drums. And so now she can solo the drums or turn the drums all the way down and play with the song, or just play along with the drums. And that feeds out of the iPhone into the drum set. So she's hearing it in her headphones mixed in with everything else. As someone who's I worked in the radio industry when I first got started. I worked with all these bands. I watched a lot of people do all this stuff. And I was like, that is the most amazing way to learn, is to just be able to separate all this stuff out and play along, and then still go and meet with, instructors that make sure that she's using her hands correctly or whatever, because she just can't up to speed so fast. And she learns fast. But I'm just saying that in 2 months, she was playing, at a venue in front of people. And
that's cool.
Holding her own.
That's super cool.
And it was a lot of hard work, but it was also just watching the technology. And I just thought, the thing that gets me excited about technology in general is the speed at which we can learn something. I can think of something that I want to learn, and I can absorb so much information, and watching that get converted to actually a physical ability. I just thought, sometimes because I have a firm belief that, things get dark, but if we really think about it, it's never been better. Like in a macro level.
Sure.
Go back 10 years, 20 years, 50 years.
That's like the one candle that's holding hope in me right now.
You got to keep on coming back to that, because it's really easy, because the news that comes in makes us more and more upset. And it's really easy to get dark about what's happening. But really, if you look at a macro level of the whole world of where we are, we go through little divots, but the overall trajectory is always up, like that from where we were, at any given time before that. And so,
you kind of notice that just by watching old media too, like even stuff from like the 80s and 90s, and be like, oh man, culturally, how was that okay? We okay with it?
How did we think that was okay? Or how did we, how did this work or whatever? And, and I think we're more conscious to it now. But when I look at, again, I'm always fascinated by the ability of people to learn quickly, and be able to absorb. I almost created a company called B212 Media, based on the Matrix. I need a program for a B212 helicopter.
Yes.
Someone already took it. Someone already thought of that. But that's like the goal. Like when I'm working is like, how do you do this as fast as possible? And I feel like when I saw that, I felt like that was a step in that direction.
That's cool. I'm a former drummer, actually. I used to drum in high school and middle school. So I'm like, I am tempted now that maybe the kids are in daycare and I may have a little more free time. I want one of those electronic drum sets, but also I have VR headsets, and I know that there are a bunch of mixed reality companies that are now doing things where they can overlay the almost like Guitar Hero, overlay the incoming tracks and let you hit in sync. Has your daughter tried that, Alex?
She hasn't. I have all the tools to do that. She just was cranking away. I kind of just feed fuel towards her direction. She plays guitar, bass, keyboard, and drums was new for her in the last 2 months, and which is not bad for 14.
Not bad.
I just keep on throwing logs on the fire, and I try to stay away from the moving parts. Just keep on giving her what she needs.
This is good parenting advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Just keep on. Here, let me give you the tools that you need, and just
I'm sort of, especially for my daughter, I'm looking at what she's into. I'm like, okay, how can I help? I'm gonna just say, little push to keep it going. Anthony, anything you want to highlight in your life right now?
I mean, this is probably something that a lot of people have been checking out, but this week I was rewatching the first season of Loki and watching the second season, and I feel like
second season.
You know, it's one of those things that like it feels so stupid to be defending like this giant entertainment corporation that is going to be fine. They're going to be fine, but like at a time where, you know, obviously there's a lot of negative headlines and about sort of like what is the future of Marvel. And I think that's probably healthy, and it's probably healthy to have a, you know, movie ecosystem that's less dependent on superhero blockbusters. Despite all that macro stuff, it's nice to kind of come back and be like, oh yeah, sometimes they make really good, fun stuff. And I mean, I think the second season is not quite as good as the first season, but I think the Loki shows, despite definite problems in the writing, I think are a lot of fun, and they've been making me happy this week.
They're good. I mean, they're fun, especially after. I mean, I just saw the Marvels and reviewed on my movie podcast, the Filmcast. That's a lot of fun. It did remind me of like a time when like, oh man, we didn't have to worry about like the crazy world building of all the Marvel stuff. You could just like sit back and enjoy these characters having fun, reinventing themselves. So cool. I'm really digging Loki too, Anthony. So yeah, I'm glad you're liking it. I want to just highlight a couple of things on my end. And specifically, I think we are in a really great time for animation because I am a huge Scott Pilgrim fan. And that Scott Pilgrim Takes Off show that's on Netflix right now, which I was not super excited for a while. I was like, why are we... The comics are great. The movie is incredible, the Edgar Wright movie. Why would we revisit this? What are we doing here? And all I will say is they are not redoing Scott Pilgrim. It is something different, something unique. It's a remix, not a rehash, I'd say. And
art style is beautiful too.
It's beautiful art. Yeah, from the anime studio that did Devilman Crybaby, I believe. So like it looks great. Adam Managuchi did the music, you know, like with like good people. So like just the vibes of it are really great. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of a miracle this exists. You know, like the book was great. The book was like one of those like mid 2000s things I think is a great exploration of life in your 20s, and it hit me certainly at the right time where I was. And then the movie is one of those things where I think that is one of my favorite movies of all time, partially because I was at San Diego Comic-Con when that debuted, and like just crazy stuff happened during that, like just seeing that screening. That was like one of those things when Comic-Con was Hollywood was taking over Comic-Con. But anyway, I love the movie. I love the book, and the anime series is really great too. Also want to shout out two other things. Pluto is an anime series on Netflix as well, and it is an adaptation of the Naoki Urasawa manga. And it's set in the world of Astro Boy. So if you remember Astro Boy from Osamu Tezuka, it is a modern reinterpretation, actually not quite modern, but like a mature reinterpretation of Astro Boy that focuses on a murder mystery. Someone is killing the 7 most capable artificial intelligent robots in the world, and it's a murder mystery trying to figure that out. And Astro Boy does appear. It's such a mature, well-written show that is also, I think, has great like background trappings, because it's also a world where people are trying to coexist with robots, and some people don't believe robots have rights. Some people don't believe robots should be equivalent to humans or anything. So if you like the setting of Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell or parts of the Matrix or something too, I think there's a lot for you there. It's also a really powerful anti-war series, which is a really, I don't know, fascinating thing to see right now. So yeah, check out Pluto as well. Blue Eye Samurai is my final recommendation. That is a fantastic show. Just like a straight up fun anime samurai show that's on Netflix right now. And the action is good. The writing is good. Again, tremendous animation. That's CG animation on Netflix, but really, really good stuff. So yeah, those are my recommendations, folks. And let's just take a little break here. Do we have anything on the Sam Altman thing yet? Because we have hit 8 o'clock.
No. And we've hit 8 o'clock, which leads me to believe that, I mean, either it's happened just right now, or and we haven't heard anything, or that nothing is happening.
Or nothing is happening.
Give it 5 more minutes.
We'll give
it 5 more minutes. We can vamp.
I tell you one that my family, what we do is as a family, we got kind of into this with COVID, is that at about, I don't know, 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, we usually watch a show, and we're just winding our way through a show. Like, and it's just, we start at the beginning and we watch all of it. And the one that I was really surprised at that we all really enjoyed was Hannah. the TV show, not the movie.
That's interesting. Like, that movie was amazing. So yeah.
There's like 3. The movie was really good. But Hannah, the TV show is like 3 seasons, and it's designed as 3 seasons. So it's, and I would, I think that, but the whole family enjoyed it. I wasn't ready to have my kids.
A murder teen for the whole family.
For the whole family. And well, and like the one that I love it when someone designs it, whether it's, designs it. We're going to do 3 seasons. We're not going to try to stretch this out forever. Another good one like that was like Penny Dreadful, which I'm not watching with my kids. But
when they're older,
but I'm not going to watch it. But I loved Penny Dreadful. And
that was a really good vibe. Penny Dreadful. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that show.
Open. I really get into opens and closes of movies because I used to have to work on some of that. And the open for Penny Dreadful is just a masterpiece. There's certain things that you look at, like the Kingdom has like one of the best opens as far as like how much information can I jam into 2.5 minutes. But Penny Dreadful, it was just the artistry of it was, and it was telling you a whole story about all the people that were involved in it. And but it was really good. Really good film, a really good series. But so we kind of wind our way through. Sometimes we just get bored. We're like, oh, and usually it's because shows become there's too much drama. Like there's too much personal drama. At some point, they made it into we stopped having a show about whatever we came for, and we now have a soap opera, and that's usually when we quit.
I feel like that happened to Killing Eve, which was really fun first few seasons, and then kind of devolved.
I remember Ted Lasso too. Like we were kind of like
yeah.
And it was the first season was so good, and by the end of the second season, you're like, I'm kind of done.
I don't know what's happening here. I do like the idea though of having a family viewing session because my kids are 5 and 1.5, so we're not quite there yet. But I'm doing nightly gaming time with my daughter, so I'm totally doing the indoctrination to the world of RPGs and Mario. And we've just started Mario RPG, which is the perfect combination of all those things. And yeah.
There's something
Paris,
about
if you're looking for something to play, that's perfect.
Something about it that we all have to agree on it. Like we did Alias, so we did.
Alias is good, so good.
It was start to finish. So and what happens is when you watch it every night, you really can keep up with all the subplots, and so and all the matter and everything else, and it gets into it. And then we did that with Alias. We did it with Heroes. We did it with the second version of Heroes too, but it was. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we did it with what was it? It was an AI crime.
Was it the Jonathan Nolan one?
Yeah. I don't know why it slips my mind because I watched so much of it. But it was the
one with the guy from Lost. Yes.
Was it?
No, it was.
No. It's Jonathan Nolan.
Person of Interest.
Person of Interest. Yeah, the bad guy from Lost was like the main guy, one of the guys in that show. Yeah. So so anyway, but so we watched Person of Interest was like, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 seasons. That was like it's like it was a solid half a year or something like that of watching it or something. So you feel like everybody, like you go have dinner with them at that point. But there's something about that in that view that anyway, I if you have a family that are all close enough. Good one. My wife has just started doing Moonlighting, which is now on Hulu with all the original music, and that show is so good. Oh my God.
I was like, we looked at, we opened Moonlighting and we were like, I loved it when I was when I was in.
It's just fast because especially now because we're all very sad about Bruce Willis and like he just can't work anymore. He's going through medical difficulties, but to see him in his prime and to be young and beautiful and charming, like it is so much fun. Yeah.
I tried to get them into Miami Vice, but there was just no.
That's a
tough sell.
I was like,
yeah.
Miami Vice when I was.
I mean,
it's hard to imagine like kids watching like the full runs of like non-serialized, just like purely episodic shows. For,
it's The Office,
7
man.
to 9
I love
seasons.
it. I love non-serial shows. Like Law and Order.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it. I don't know. My wife and I used to watch it when we first were dating, and you just always be able to sit down and watch a Law and Order. You didn't have to know anything about the past. You didn't have to know anything about the future. And it wasn't, you just watch the show. And it was very formulaic. Something bad's going to happen. I know I was talking to, there was one time where Justine Ezerick was on, Justine was on Law and Order. And I remember.
Oh, yeah.
And I was trying to get her, like there was the Steelers were on playing Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football on, and I was like, hey, I see she tweeted something from New York. I'm like, we're both in New York. Let's go watch a Steeler game. And she's like, what? I said, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I've been dead all day. So she's been laying in it, but I love the fact that it was very formulaic, and it was, I don't know, for me, there was some closure to that of not having to feel like I missed an episode and now I have to go back and watch 3 other ones, or I have to remember who did what. There's
something like beautiful about that. But just checking in on the Sam Altman news. It is now 8 or 7 p.m. You've not seen any new updates.
Yeah,
His Twitter
I've just
feed has not been
checked
updated.
in with some people on the ground, and it seems like nothing is happening, is what's happening.
We're waiting for the Pope smoke to...
Basically, we are all posted outside the Vatican, and we're like, let's get that white smoke up here, baby.
It'd be great if they push smoke out of one of the windows.
Yeah, they
That would be too funny.
whenever a new CEO of OpenAI is chosen, they send out like a purple flash.
Well, whenever the AI chooses one, like in the future, that's what it's going to be. When the AI chooses who will lead it.
That's really, they should have ChatGPT just referee this.
This is true.
Like,
this is true.
Explain all the things that happened and everything else and get it to, I'm sure that somebody there did ask ChatGPT how to situation and probably gave it some crazy idea, like just put everybody in a ship and just
man. Well, you know what? I'm sure Leo and crew and other Twitch shows will be chatting about whatever's happening at OpenAI next week. For now, though, folks, can you let us know where can people find you on the internet these days? Paris, what's up?
You can follow me on Twitter at Paris Martineau or at paris.nyc on Blue Sky, and tune in to This Week in Google, where I'm a co-host, and we'll definitely be talking about whatever the resolution of this, Altman thing is on the show this week.
Sure. Anthony?
The easiest way to follow me is I'm at Anthony Ha on Threads and Blue Sky. I'm also that on Twitter, but don't really tweet anymore.
Stay away from Twitter. Yes, Alex, where can people find you? I'm sure people know, but let's remind them.
I'm on office hour. I'm officehours.global is what I do every morning. So we do a morning show where we just talk about media production. And so you can find that as Office Hours Global on YouTube, or you can go to officehours.global. If you sign up there, you'll get an email every single day telling you what we're going to talk about every single day. And then I'm also on MacBreak. So that's so I'm sure that hopefully by Tuesday we'll have something to talk about to figure out what actually this all means.
Yeah, I thought we were going to be talking more about Thanksgiving, but no, we were just too busy with actual news happening, folks. You can find me writing about tech at Engadget. Just reviewed the PlayStation Portal. I'm off for a couple of weeks, but I also do the Engadget podcast, and you can find me talking about movies and TV on the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com. Thank you so much, folks. This was a great group, and I hope to chat with you all again. Another twit is in the can.
Amazing.